Great. Welcome everyone to the Town of Greater Napanee regular session of council for the 27th of August, 2024. I just want to remind everyone, both in the body of the council chambers as well as at home, that this evening's meeting will be live streamed via our YouTube channel, and it'll also be placed and set on our YouTube channel for forever, an extended period of time. So for the folks that aren't able to be here tonight, and I know there's some that wanted to come into council chambers, but we're at capacity now. They'll be able to watch it from home on live stream. So thank you, folks. I'll call the meeting to order. And just before we get started, I just want to let everybody know we've got a very healthy crowd here this evening, and it's good to see because we've got some important conversations that are going to happen this evening. I know that there's some people that had showed up and weren't able to get in because we're at capacity with respect to our fire codes. So what we're going to do is that we're going to have a special meeting next Tuesday, September 3rd, so that we can listen to everyone's thoughts and views with respect to the homeless situation. So we've got one registered deputation tonight, which is Mr. Cross. We'll be listening to that, but we won't be entertaining any further deputations this evening. However, we will be having an open session at the SPC next Tuesday at on the 3rd of September, so that we can ensure that everyone has an opportunity to come and speak and to say their piece, and to and just to have it as an open special session of council. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody that's at home that's listening knows that they will have an opportunity to speak if they have something to say, and especially the folks that showed up this evening and weren't able to get in. So thank you. So we'll start this evening's meetings off with our rise and report from a closed session. I'll look for a motion to rise and report from closed session. Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Shank. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. I would like to report that in closed session tonight, council approved the closed session minutes of July 23rd and August 12th. Received legal advice regarding the proposed parks bylaw to be discussed at this evening's meeting. Received legal advice regarding a labor relations matter and gave direction to staff. Received information regarding 2 offers to purchase land and gave direction to staff, and received information regarding the nominations for the OPP Detachment Board and directed that an appointment bylaw be brought to the next meeting. I will further report that at the special closed session meeting on August 12th, council received a report from the CAO regarding labor relations matters and gave direction to staff. Based on the direction to staff in closed session regarding the corporation's approach to unsolicited land purchase offers, council will now consider another motion in open session. Whereas council believes that the current land sale bylaw number 2022-0009 and associated procedures does not fully meet council's intent of creating a clear, transparent, and open process regarding the declaration of surplus and sale of municipal land. Therefore, council directs that a temporary moratorium be placed on the consideration of land sale offers for land that is not currently listed for sale with the town's real estate vendor of record. And further, that council directs the CAO to review and report back regarding improvements that can be made to the town's land sale bylaw, including, at minimum, the requirement that a public review of all land holdings and surplus declarations be completed at least once per council term. And further, that council directs that until the CAO's report has been received and considered by council, additional sales may only be considered by direction of council if a report regarding the property is placed in open session and the property is listed with the town's real estate vendor of record. Having said that, we'll look for a motion for the adoption of the agenda as presented. Oh, sorry. We need a mover and a seconder on that motion. Moved by Councillor Norrie, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. If there's any further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Now we'll look for an adoption for the agenda as presented for the 27th of August, 2024. Moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Councillor Shank. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? And I believe Councillor Hicks, go ahead.
Through you, Your Worship, just regarding, oh, and I have it right here.
Yeah, I believe it's 9.7.
9.7. Item 9.7 on the agenda, the installation of the heat exchanger at the water pollution control plant. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Councilor Hicks. What we'll do is we'll remove that from the consent agenda and so that you can participate in the other reports that are in the consent agenda, and then we'll get you to come back afterwards. So we'll deal with that later in the agenda. So thank you for that. Is there any other disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Seeing none. Presentations. This evening we have a presentation from Lynn Chenier, Prince Edward and Lennox and Addington Social Services, Housing and Homelessness. Come on up, Lynn, and once you get settled up at the front, I'll give you sort of the Reader's Digest version. I know you may have been here before, but we'll run through it anyways. So. Thank you for coming this evening. So this evening, are you going to start off then, Lynn? Yeah. The way we have to do this is the button on the right, it says talk, and you have to hold that button down as you're talking and then release it when you're done talking. If you don't do that, the folks at home can't hear what you're saying. And then I get all kinds of nasty emails and phone calls. So I would respectfully request that you just hold the button down when you're talking. So whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Does it work? Okay. All right. Thank you very much for having me tonight to do a presentation on the services and programs that PELASS provides. So we've tried to give this a real Napanee spin and Lennox and Addington spin as to the services that we provide and some of the data that we provided in the report. I'm not going to read all of the slides directly. You all have the package. The public has the package. So we will just give some highlights and then have lots of time for questions, if that's all right with council. So basically, back in 1998, the province did a reorganization of service managers, and Lennox and Addington County was deemed to be the service manager for both Lennox and Addington County as well as Prince Edward County. So that's just a quick one on that one. We're governed by a committee called PELASS Committee. 3 councillors from both Prince Edward County and Lennox and Addington County sit on that committee, which provides strategic direction to staff, et cetera, similar to a council gives direction to their staff. For the 2024 term, Councillor Calver, your deputy mayor, is the chair of PELASS Committee, along with Councillor Sam Branderhorst as vice chair from Prince Edward County, Warden John Wise from Lennox and Addington County, Councillor Doug Davison from Lennox and Addington, Mayor Steve Ferguson, and Councillor Brad Nyman from Prince Edward County. So they are who we report to on a bi-monthly basis. And those meetings are available online if anyone is interested in hearing them. So we'll move on to housing and homelessness. So we have what's called a local housing corporation, and those are all of the buildings that provide rent geared to income housing to residents in Lennox and Addington County and Prince Edward County. Lennox and Addington has 306 units, and the bulk of those units are located in Greater Napanee.
Sorry, go ahead, Councillor Pennell.
Excuse me, sorry about this, but through you, Mr. Mayor. Lynn, could we please have the slideshow advanced so that people at home can see it?
Kylie, can you facilitate that for us? Oh, there we go. I think we got her working now, so.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Pennell.
My apologies.
Thanks, Scott.
Sorry about that.
You do have a function, so thank you very much.
In addition to the actual buildings that the local housing corporation manages, there are also five nonprofit housing providers within Prince Edward County and Lennox and Addington County, and 3 of those are in Lennox and Addington, and they provide another 104 units of rent geared to income housing in the county. In addition to the actual buildings that we own and offer rent geared to income housing, we also have what are called rent supplements. The rent supplements are in private landlords' buildings, and we we have a rent supplement agreement with the landlord so that the tenant is offered rent at 30% of their income. So it becomes rent geared to income and makes it very affordable for them. Those programs ended in March of 2024, and we still have a high number of rent supplements. So thankfully, we had an increase in our homelessness prevention program funding for 24-25. So all of those rent supplements are being covered through the homelessness prevention program. Because having over 100 rent supplements, all of a sudden no longer having access to rent supplement was not in the best interest of our communities, for sure. On the next slide is really just some data in terms of the number of units in Lennox and Addington and Prince Edward County and the different types of units that are available. So I won't go through those because they are included in your package. The next slide is around the homelessness prevention program funding. So the province of Ontario provides funding to service managers through the homelessness prevention program. And if I could say HPP for short, that would be very helpful. So thank you. And I hope you, if you don't remember what it is, let me know. So for this year, so for the 24-25 fiscal year, PELASS received $2,454,000, which is a significant increase over previous years. That funding is broken out into 4 different categories: community outreach and support services, emergency shelter solutions, housing assistance, and supportive housing. Next slide. There we go. So under the HPP Community Outreach and Support Services, PELASS uses this funding to really fund gaps that we find in our services to low-income residents of Lennox and Addington and Prince Edward County. So we have provided funding to the Community Advocacy and Legal Clinic to provide eviction prevention services, including a tenant hotline, legal workshops, technology access for landlord and tenant board hearings, secondary consultations for intermediaries, as well as homelessness prevention training. And those services are available to anybody in the county. They do not have to be anyone that lives in our local housing corporation or receiving rent supplements. It's available to everybody. We've also provided funding to the AMHS KFLNA to support the street outreach program, which we found that there was a significant gap in services for mental health outreach services. So definitely one of the organizations that were funded through the homelessness prevention program was AMHS KFLNA. Funding was also provided to the Napanee Area Community Health Center to provide a community development and housing support worker. And this worker really, she's an outreach worker as well, outreaching to individuals that are homeless, provisionally accommodated through, couch surfing, all of those kinds of things. So she's a real benefit to have in the community. And so that was a gap that was identified and one that PELASS was quite happy to be able to fund. PELASS has also funded Morning Star Mission to support their takeout meal program and to expand their volunteer income tax program, because helping people to receive the full amount of income that they're entitled to is extremely important, especially with housing prices out of control the way that they are. So I'm just going to hand it over to Scott to talk about emergency shelter solutions.
Great, thanks, Lynn, and I apologize, Scott. I should have introduced you as well. Scott Robertson from the County of Lennox and Addington. So the floor is yours when you have the time to
Thank you
talk.
very much, Mayor Richardson. So I'm just going to talk about our emergency shelter solutions. I think most people in Napanee are familiar with Morning Star Mission and what they operate. So we provide some funding so they can run a warming room. And we also fund the Hope Center out of Picton to do the same thing. And sometimes people end up in what we call our emergency motel program. And that's where people can go if they came into our office. Generally, that's like at, 4:25 and they're homeless and they need a place to stay, then we could set them up in a motel for the night. So homelessness prevention program funding, this just sort of breaks it down. A couple of things I'm going to highlight is we spend a lot of our homelessness prevention funding preventing homelessness. So we get people who are late with their rent, who can't pay their utilities. Occasionally it's to fix a vehicle that they need to get to work, but usually they've already fixed the vehicle and we're ending up helping them with utilities or rent. So we spend almost $600,000 a year. And last year we had 772 different payments. That's a lot of time to go through that. And that's mainly our caseworkers and other staff working with that. The by name list is just a measure the province and federal government came up with to more accurately track the number of homeless people in a community. So we've adopted those standards as well. And you can read about them if you would like. So transitional housing, we have two different transitional housing programs. One is where we rent in the community. We rent from private landlords, and tenants generally pay their maximum Ontario Works or ODSP shelter rate. And these are people who are homeless, who've been on the street some 4 or 5, 6 years. These are some of the people that are really visibly homeless that people have seen around town. And they move in to that program. We provide a number of supports to help them give them the best opportunity to live successfully and have successful tenancies. We also have a transitional housing program in our local housing corporation. So our total portfolio is 421 units, and 1 out of every 10th unit goes to somebody from our by name list, which is great. One of the issues is we get about 40 vacancies a year. So that's only about 4 of those units that become available. But the ones that do, people have been really successful. No surprise, people have been more successful if they're graduating from our other transitional housing program than if they're just moving directly off the street into that program. Just the need for supports is so much greater. Okay. Next. In support of housing, we also funded some initiatives there. And mainly what we're trying to do is connect people who are unhoused with services that can help them, that can direct them to, sometimes it's basic, food, showers, medication. We sometimes connect them with the community paramedic or our community paramedicine program. But then it's deeper supports like mental health, substance abuse, addictions. Sometimes people have a developmental disability that's been undiagnosed or unknown about, and so we help them get treatment for that. Oh, and food security, a big piece of that. So some of the challenges that we face with homelessness, and there's many facets to homelessness. One of the key parts is just the cost of housing. So a 1-bedroom apartment in Napanee is a little over $1,400 a month. A single person on Ontario Works can get up to $390 per month. They're $1,000 short every month in being able to afford a place to live. And somebody on ODSP, it's slightly better. Sorry, this number just changed, so better. It's $582 a month for shelter for a single person. There's also some numbers here around what a single person earning minimum wage and a senior receiving maximum OAS and other supplements can get. So that single person earning $2,500 a month, if they were paying 30% of their income towards rent, their rent would be $751. So even a person working full-time making minimum wage, it would be paying double what is kind of accepted as a Canadian standard for affordable housing. And the senior is a little bit worse off in that they would be paying about 30% of their income would be $726. And a lot of seniors aren't getting the maximum benefits from these programs. So that's one of the challenges. There's 70 people right now in our by name list. That doesn't mean that there's only 70 homeless people in all of Prince Edward and Lennox and Addington. One of the things to get on our by name list, you have to consent, because what we do, we meet with groups of people. If you're on our by name list, then I can talk to people from the town of Napanee and other support agencies, and you give us consent to collectively discuss your case. Some people aren't interested in that. So even if they aren't on our by name list, we still service them and still help them out. We currently, so one of the problems with it, the affordability that's at the top of this slide presents is we have 10 people living in our transitional housing program that are ready to move. They're ready to graduate, and there's nowhere for them to go. All they need is a place for $390 a month, which doesn't exist. So what we're trying to do with some of those is find those rent supplements from the earlier slide to help them out, but there's no rent supplements available. There's also no new funding available to build. So some of those permanent solutions are really hard to achieve. And it does take about 1.5 to 3 years for somebody to move from, pretty hardcore living on the street to the point where they're ready to live independently. It takes about 6 months for people to kind of shake the homelessness lifestyle, like where there's, people have difficulty. They haven't lived by a clock for 4 years. They haven't, it's a really big change. And then about 6 months or a little longer to get ready for employment or whatever it is they're going to do. So that, and I think we have one person who's a little over 3 years now, but they're making steady progress. 54 of the 70 people on the by name list live in our transitional housing program. So they don't have permanent housing, so we aren't allowed to count them as having their house or their homelessness solved, but they at least have a place to spend every night. They have a place to cook meals. They have a place to hang out. So, I like that stat. I don't like the stat that there's 70, but I like that 54 were already housing. Another stat I really like is 30 people have moved from our transitional housing program into permanent housing. That means some of the people that moved into the local housing corporations, there was 1 in 10 units, but it's also some people we've been able to get into rent supplements in the community. So 30 people, their homelessness has been solved, which is great. And I'd like to think, we've got a formula that will work for a lot of people. The problem is resourcing, and right at the end, where do they live? Because we've kind of got a bit of a log jam in there now. We also have the homelessness prevention benefit that I talked about earlier, and we provide support to agencies. And then I think I'm going to hand it back to you for this part, Lynn. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Scott. Go ahead, Lynn.
Thank you. So I'm not going to go through all the data on this slide. However, the data really is looking at the stats for Lennox and Addington County as well as Greater Napanee. And really this shows that the bulk of the need is in Greater Napanee. So therefore, there's a lot more supports being provided in Greater Napanee to try and assist with the homelessness problem. So you can go through those statistics more on your own as you'd like. PELASS staff, so we have caseworkers that are engaged with and connected to every single person who's included on the by name list. So they have a direct resource when they need it that they can call our office, they can drop into our office. They'll always be able to talk to their caseworker, whether it's by email, by phone, or in person, to say, hey, this is happening to me and I need help. And our caseworker will work with that person, connect them up to the resources that may be able to assist that person with whatever the situation is happening at that moment in time. And that's been a really, really helpful connection for people on the by name list to have because case managers then are able to work with other community partners to say, hey, Sally just called me. This is the situation. Are you able to help with that? Well, yes, I spoke with Sally yesterday and this is what we were able to do for, but I did think last night, maybe this would also be a benefit. So we're able to really work together as a community and all of the community agencies, which has been a real benefit. Some of the other tables that we work with, the LNA Risk Watch Situation Table, Morningstar Mission, we're in regular contact with them. Career Edge, which is Employment Ontario. The Napanee Area Community Health Center is very involved. KFLNA Addictions and Mental Health is very, very involved as well with our clients and our staff. Salvation Army, and as well as the Quinte Detention Center. And that connection really is more around discharge planning for people coming out of Quinte if they're planning to stay within the area. And just our last slide is really, we call it a PELASS Performance Metrics Dashboard. That dashboard is available to the public 24/7 on our website, and the link is included in this presentation, so feel free to check it out whenever you'd like to. We update the information as it's available to us. Sometimes you'll see that some things are sitting at June, some are sitting at July, and really it's just dependent on the timing of the reports if you see some differences like that. And that's it for our presentation, but we'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Great, thanks, Lynn. I was just going to ask if you could just hang tight. I'm sure there'd be some questions for either you or Scott. So council, does anyone have any questions with respect to the presentation? We'll start with Councillor Pennell and we'll go to Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks, Lynn and Scott, for coming in and speaking to us tonight, giving us this report. I like the transitional housing part of it. It seems that there's a goal at the end, and although there's a log jam as we speak of, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. My question to you, I have three questions regarding that, if it's okay with you, Mr. Worship, to just ask all three. But do you foresee this program continuing in 2025?
Yes, I do. We've seen good success out of it. So as mentioned in the presentation, we've had 30 people who've moved on from transitional housing into permanent housing. And there's been a lot of work on behalf of the person who was living there, as well as staff, community agencies to provide the supports in place that they need. And that is a really, really good solution that there's 30 that have been able to move on. So those are big successes. The fact that we have 10 people living in transitional housing right now that can live independently in their own private accommodation is another success, that they've reached that point over time. So now we're just trying to find, okay, well, what could that solution for permanent housing look like? So we do fully expect that we'll be continuing that program, because those are really big, successful numbers for a small municipality.
Yeah, yes, it is, and I congratulate you on that. With the, other than Picton and Napanee, do you have other transitional houses in Lennox and Addington and other municipalities other than Napanee?
Sure. Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Pennell Jr. and the rest of council. We don't have any of the private rentals that we do, but we do have some of our LHC units in, Tamworth, Northbrook, where we have housed people who are unhoused, and those have been successful. And the homelessness looks a little different in the north. It's generally not, on a sidewalk. It's like they're in their uncle's cabin that doesn't have any hot water, or they're in a trailer back behind a barn kind of thing. It looks a little different, but yeah, so it's just in Picton and Napanee where we have the rentals, but in our whole LHC portfolio, wherever we have those buildings, which the bulk are in Napanee and Picton, because that's where the need are, but we do have a couple out there.
Great, thank you. And just one last question. As I was reading the report, I see the transitional houses is listed as 34, 35. Is that actual houses or is that bedrooms for them?
Thank you for the question, through your worship. Those are rooms.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Pennell. Go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. On slide 6, I understand that the rent supplement program is now no longer in effect. But how long would a rent supplement, what is the term? So from the day that the individual is eligible to receive a rent supplement, like how long does that usually go for?
Thanks for that question, through your worship. There really isn't a specific end date on them. They started the investment in affordable housing program, I actually believe started in 2007. So that program ended this past March, and it kept getting extended and extended and extended. So at this point, they have finally said, like, okay, it's done. So we were able to roll those rent supplements into the homelessness prevention program, because they are such a huge benefit. And if we were just to end it, those tenants, chances are, would probably end up being homeless or very, very precariously housed.
One more?
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
One further question, and it's related to slide 19. And I saw reference to Quinte Detention Center. And I was wondering if you could provide some insight as to, I think you said people who choose to stay in the area. So if you could expand on that, because there's been anecdotal comments made. I saw, somebody told me, how many people who are released after having served their term choose to stay in Napanee? And if they weren't formerly from Lennox and Addington County, because it's typically they want to stay in Greater Napanee because this is like the urban center, right? Can I ask why we would be giving benefits, our benefits, to someone who may be actually coming from, I don't know, Toronto, Ottawa, wherever they were sentenced, and yeah, you know where I'm going with this. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that question. So generally, people, when they're released from Quinte detention, they go back to the municipality that they came from. There are very few that actually choose to stay here, and if they do, it's usually because they have a connection here of some kind. I can't give you any numbers because I don't have any data on that. I'm sorry, could you repeat the second part of your question?
Well, what benefits would be given? So if there is a connection, if it's a family connection, do you work with the family to house this person and get them back on track to get a job? Like, or are you actively looking to find them transitional housing? Just, yeah.
Thank you for repeating that. So we will work with anybody who needs our assistance, regardless of where they come from or where they have to be in our municipality for us to help them. So the fact that they're here makes them kind of our resident because they don't have a permanent address somewhere else. So historically, most of our office worked under the Ontario Works Act, and for as long as I can remember, even under the old General Welfare Assistance Act, if somebody presents to your office as homeless, they are considered a resident of your municipality. And that's how we take the view of it. So we will assist anybody regardless of where they came from. Sometimes that it looks different from person to person. Sometimes it looks like, okay, well, what do you need from us? Well, I'm trying to get back to Thunder Bay. And we will help them to get back to Thunder Bay. Or it's, well, I have family here, but I'm not able to stay with them, so I need a place to stay, and I don't have an income. So then we would look at the whole picture. We would do, going through the process of applying for Ontario Works Assistance, trying to get them set up somewhere, whatever the situation needs. Sometimes, unfortunately, that may mean we don't have a place for them to stay, which means they end up being homeless. But we do try to provide other supports and connection to other community agencies while that is happening. So I hope that answers your question.
And just to add to that, I don't have these stats in front of me, but I know Morningstar tracks where people are from that are using their warming room and stays overnight. And I don't know this number, but I know it's like 80 or possibly 90% of the people are from Napanee who use their services. So the majority of the people there are from this area or have a connection to this area.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hicks. Councillor Norrie.
Thank you, Your Worship. Appreciate the work you're doing. I'm going to take a bit different direction and nothing negative, but I'm here to represent the taxpayer. Majority of our taxpayers are seniors. They don't feel safe. I know it's not your fault what happens down at the parks, but we have to get them out of the parks. And I know we're talking about bylaws, but is there any way that we can give the seniors and other taxpayers a better quality life and store owners that we get these tents up behind the building on Advance Avenue, the social services building? There's a ton of help all around there. If they live there, you put up some shade tents. You've got paramedics, you got police, you got fire, you got a clinic behind the Kawartha, you got Salvation Army, all right there, and the social workers in that building. And they could even use the ground behind 99 Advance. Then we can see everybody, we can get them better help, and our tax-paying citizens whose lives are being affected can start using their parks again. Has anybody thought about that?
Through your worship, so we don't have any ability to move people along from social services. All we can do is offer supports in whatever way that we can, whether that's financial assistance, HPP benefits, connection to other resources. So we don't have any ability to move anyone along. We're a social services agency, so we're not an enforcement agency. We're not able to enforce regulations or rules other than, do you qualify for Ontario Works Assistance, et cetera. So we don't have the ability to move people along. And I know that doesn't probably help you.
I appreciate that. I can fully understand coming from an enforcement background, but has anybody sat at a round table and figured this is the best place for everybody so we can fix the thing and help the taxpayer? This is what I'm worried about. People's quality of life are going downhill. They won't take their grandkids out to the parks. It's just, they won't walk up John Street to butter my buns anymore. I was in there today talking to them. I know it's not your fault. We didn't create it, but has anybody had a think tank about how to do this, including with us and that, and make a very strict bylaw? Has anybody sat around with different agencies instead of saying, we can't do this, we'll try this? Or is it just each group separately and nothing happening? I'm sorry to be so negative, but we can go to the store for under an hour anymore because getting stopped. Bill was 3 hours the other day at Metro. So there's a lot of complaints out there.
Sure. Thank you. Mayor Richardson, through you to Councillor Norrie and the rest of council. We do have two groups that we have headed up at PELASS. They're both homelessness working groups, and one is like a frontline group where they get together. They're generally talking about people, or they might be talking about, 5 people at an encampment, and they're strategizing about what do we do. We work with lots of service providers, lots of mental health agencies, lots of support agencies, but also with the town of Greater Napanee, and they've been great to work with. So there's also a leadership table where we're talking about what can we do to help the frontline people and give them more direction. One of the things we've talked about is providing education to the community, improving our communication and what people know about homelessness and what information they receive. And in those groups, we're definitely talking about spots we'd prefer people to be versus where they are, and actions we'd prefer to see, and all kinds of things. It starts from, what can we do today to what should we be thinking about so that a year or two from now, we're better prepared. That doesn't answer your question around moving them. We talk about where we'd like them to be, but not many in the room have the ability to actually move people.
Thanks, Councillor Norrie, and we may have further discussion with respect to that in some of our other reports. So go ahead, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, actually, Councillor Norrie stole some of my questions I had, but I do have others. As Councillor Norrie alluded to, our biggest problem right now is we have homeless people on the sidewalks, in our parks. We have tax-paying citizens who are afraid to use the parks. Some cases, their children are scared of some of these people. If we were to issue a certificate to vacate some of these people, do you have anywhere for them to go?
Thank you for the question. Through your worship, we don't have an emergency shelter. Emergency shelters also don't solve the problem either, because there are many, many people who will not go to an emergency shelter for a number of reasons, safety, health concerns, all of those kinds of things. So having an emergency shelter is not a solution to homelessness. It's a temporary Band-Aid for some people. I totally understand, seeing what it's like to see tents on the side of the road and in your parks and all of those kinds of things. But unfortunately, we don't have somewhere for them to go. Unfortunately, every single municipality in the province, in addition to the country, is trying to figure out this problem. So as we know, Kingston recently tried to remove an encampment. Waterloo has tried to remove an encampment. Both were shot down by the courts. We're a very small municipality here as a town and as a county. So Waterloo region and Kingston have much more resources than we do. So I don't think that we would be any more successful than they have been in any type of removal type situation than they have been. And that's just a sad fact. And every municipality is struggling with this. And we've definitely asked for some provincial direction or supports, because this is a provincial problem. It's not a Lennox and Addington or a Greater Napanee problem. It's a provincial problem. And every single municipality is struggling, not very successfully, because we're all struggling on our own. So a provincial initiative or tools to help would be very, very helpful. What that looks like, I have no idea. I wish I had the solution and could wave my magic wand, but I don't. So we're working with the tools and resources that we have.
I appreciate your answer, and I understand it is a countrywide, a worldwide, province-wide for sure situation. I'm struggling with the fact that we're having such a problem with it. I'll revert back to one other question I had. you say there's 306 units in LNA. How many of those units are in Napanee?
I don't remember seeing a number there, but I know that I think in your presentation, you said the vast majority of them are. So I don't know if you have the ability to provide a number or not. So
You,
go
Your
ahead,
Worship.
Councillor Hicks.
Through you, Your Worship, I believe it'll be found on slide 18 of the presentation.
And it's 248 of
Two-
the 306 are located in Greater Napanee.
248, yeah.
And that's 81% of the local housing units.
Has there been any other units added in the last, say, 5 years, 10 years?
Yes, we were able to add 6 units in Tamworth. So we have, sorry, that's not true. 2 rent geared to income units and 6 affordable housing units in Tamworth with that new build that was done. So those have been the only additions in probably 20 years.
Thank you. The emergency motel stays, there was only $30,000 expended. That doesn't seem like a lot to me if there's, and we seem to have a lot of emergency situations in town. I'm just wondering, that doesn't seem like a lot of money. Is that a normal amount?
Thank you, Mayor, through you, to the rest of council. Yeah, we have one of the issues we have with our motel program is if somebody stays at a motel and there's a problem, then they aren't allowed back. And right now we've got about, I can't remember the number, but it's in the 50s, I think, number of people who we don't have a motel option for anywhere in our area. Prince Edward County, it gets really tough to get a hotel in August for somebody because it's their tourist season. So a lot of the people that are using those are some of our lower risk homeless people. And sometimes they're people that, there's a relationship breakup. They need a spot for the weekend. And by Wednesday, it was payday and they're back on their feet and they've got a place. That's what those motels are used for. For people like that you're seeing on your streets and in your park, the motel system doesn't work for them because their behaviors are too extreme to manage a hotel stay. And the hotels, so if somebody's at Morningstar, they're meeting with counselors, they're getting support, they're getting help. If they're having a bad day, they're helping them out. The motel, it's here's check-in and here's check-out. Motels aren't providing social supports. So it's used for more lower risk and which that's
Thank
not
you.
the bulk of the folks.
Yep, go ahead.
Just
Councillor.
one more, if I could. Is there any plans at all to add the homeless situation, like I described, the parks and the streets? Is there any plans at all in the future to add emergency shelters, homeless situations for these people at all? Or is that just something you don't deal with? You say you have no emergency shelters for them. So is there any plans to have them in the future?
Thanks for the question. At this point in time, no, we don't. Emergency shelters are hugely expensive, and we don't have the funding to run them 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And it doesn't solve homelessness. It's a one-night Band-Aid, and it's not suitable for everybody. So we would still have the problem of people being homeless on the streets or in the parks, because it's not a one-size-fits-all. There's rules that have to be followed. There may be barriers that the person is not able to go into a shelter because there's lots of different reasons, whether it's drug usage, physical health, they have a pet. There's lots and lots of reasons why a person won't use an emergency shelter. So we're really trying to focus our resources to something that can lead to permanent housing, such as the transitional housing program, such as supporting community agencies to provide services where there's gaps in services right now. So
Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys doing this tonight.
Thank you. And just to add, there's a a method called the housing first method, where you get a person housing first and then bring the supports in, rather than bringing supports in. Most shelter stays are about 30 days. And our experience has been, it's about 1.5 to 3 years before somebody's able to leave homelessness behind and be a successful member of the community. So the 30 days wouldn't be enough. And our transitional housing program does follow the housing first model. And that's why we've been successful. We would just like to have more of it and more resources. So we feel that if we were to build on something, that would be a program worth building on for sure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Martin. Is there any other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Shank.
So you're gonna have to bear with me. So I'm trying to absorb as much knowledge as I can about this problem. Okay. Can you answer me a question? That when you pay somebody Ontario Works at $390 a month and then ODSP, do they need a permanent address for them to cash that check?
Yes, they do. So they have to be able to show that they have an address, and this is what they're being charged for rent in order to receive any of the shelter assistance portion.
So that's under PELASS, but now the homelessness, all right? All right. Where are they receiving their money? Are they getting paid?
They would be eligible for, if they have no other sources of income, they would be eligible for their Ontario Works basic needs, which is the food amount,
Yep.
or the ODSP basic needs food amount.
So for them to cash their check, they need an address, correct?
No, they need a bank account in order to cash their check, or a payday loan place or something like that.
Okay. No.
So a person who's homeless isn't eligible for the shelter portion. There's two portions with Ontario Works and ODSP, like a basic needs and a basic shelter. So the needs are for food, clothing, things like that. The shelter is for rent. So if they don't have a permanent address, they can't access that $390 or $582, which arguably, I would argue that it costs more to live outside. Like, you have other expenses, your food costs more and all that, but it's a provincial rule and we aren't able to give people that money.
Go ahead, Councillor
So,
Shank.
so what now, from the knowledge and from what I've been seeing, and that there's substance abuse, which is a major problem, okay, and mental health, all right. So it's not just somebody that's just homeless, that's down on their luck or whatever, and they'd love to have a job, but they're just down, they need help. So for mental health and substance abuse, what do you feel that's the correctional plan? Because we have major concerns here in this town. Like when a bank has to lock its doors so nobody's sleeping in there because they are urinating in there, and there's some major problems that's going to have, physically, it's going to hurt business. So the point is, if they have a substance abuse problem and the federal crowns are not prosecuting anybody because they're continuing, the OPP can do everything they want, but if the federal crowns are not prosecuting those individuals for their substance abuse problems, all right, if they're openly doing fentanyl or whatever, that's totally illegal, but the federal crowns are not prosecuting, how do you see that you're going to solve the problem? Because everybody just does a broad approach to homelessness, but if it's mental health and substance abuse, the substance abuse we're going to have to deal with because there's laws in place for that. Mental health, where is there places for mental health patients to do? Because we can't just simply just say, we can't do anything about it. It's not my problem. It's a provincial problem or everybody else's problem. But it's a town in Napanee's problem right now because it has major impacts now. Because there's a lot of people that won't go through the parks or won't do business downtown. And when the stores have to start locking, therefore, we're going to have to apply the pressure to the federal crowns to do their job. So when OPP or find somebody that they go ahead and they get convicted of a crime, because if I walk down the street and I did a crack pipe or whatever you call it, you know what I mean? You're going to get charged. So how can somebody go ahead and if somebody's urinating in a private building that somebody's paying a lot of taxes on, all right, the OPP have to have the jurisdiction to go ahead and take those individuals and that the federal crowns prosecute those individuals for that, but we have to take them to the mental health. I'm just asking, help for me to understand it because I don't understand this because it seems fairly clear on certain aspects.
Thanks for the question. So I would say there's not one issue that is the problem. It's a combination of factors. This situation has been growing for many years. It involves multiple systems, multiple levels of government, all of which have failed over the years and has brought us to this path, this critical path that we're at today. I agree. If someone is urinating in my private vestibule, there's something should be able to be done about that. What that looks like is at a provincial level in the justice system. So I definitely recommend some advocacy in those areas. With the mental health as an example, we reach out quite often, and for people who are on our by name list, one of the requirements is not only do they have to give consent, but they have to be willing to work with us and work with our community partners, and that includes mental health and addictions. So they have to be attending meetings. If they don't, they're literally in jeopardy of losing their transitional unit if they're not following through. And sometimes that it may not work the first go around, and somebody may be asked to leave. But maybe the second, third, or fourth time, it finally kicks in, and then it's all been worth it, all the struggle that has gone on in the past. So I don't think we can expect people, anyone really, to be able to grasp this service and say, I'm going to do it and I'm going to succeed and I'm going to move forward in my life. Sometimes it's going to take many, many chances and many, many tries at being successful.
Yep, go ahead, Councillor Shank.
So what I'm saying, okay, so let's say, okay, that's mental health, but if substance abuse, so if somebody's an IV or whatever drugs that they're doing, and if it's a federal law and not, you can't do that. First of all, they're going to have to get those drugs from somewhere. They're using that money from somewhere. The address they're getting, you know what I mean? And if there's a substance abuse problem, and why, I know you can't answer that, so I shouldn't even answer, why are the federal courts or federal crowns not prosecuting those individuals? All right, so when they're in the institution, that they can get the dry or get the help or whatever, because somehow some of those individuals are going to need major help, because when you have needles in a park, and if a child ever gets poked with a needle, and my excuse is that what, you know what I mean? That we didn't try everything in our power to solve that problem. So is there any way of finding out, do you ever have records of how many they actually prosecuted, all right, or how many people were charged, all right, for, you know, small amounts of narcotics or anything else?
Through your worship, unfortunately, we don't have statistics like that, and we don't track statistics. That might be something that you can ask the county attorney's office for, your local police department. I'm not sure exactly where that would come from, but that we don't have the answers for that or for why it fails or drops off the system.
And just to add to that, sort of your last question and this question, so we bring services to people. So we have teams of people that are out in the parks, meeting with those people and offering them help. Everybody who accepts our help has to do it voluntarily. There's no mandatory treatment. And so we work within the system that's out there. And that's what we're doing. And sometimes we talk to people, 5 times a week for 6 months before they say, yeah, you know what? Maybe I'm interested today. And it's important to reach out to them at that point. So we kind of work within the system that we have. And I agree, it's not the best system for sure.
Yep. Thanks, Councillor Shank. Is there any other questions for Lynn or Scott? I've just got a real brief one, if not. Go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
Through you, your worship. I don't have a question. I'd just like to say thank you, because I don't know if you hear it very often, but it's a tough row that you're hoeing, and you should be commended for being able to do what you can do with what you've been given to work within. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Just the quick question I have is that with the transitional housing, I mean, on paper, it sounds like it's the way to try and bring some of these folks back to society. Is there any thought, or is there any ability? We're a small community, small municipality. We don't have a lot of rental places, but obviously these folks are trying. They're trying to get back on track. Is there possibility that once they've graduated from the transitional housing, do they stay within Lennox and Addington County? Do they stay within Lennox and Addington County and Prince Edward County? Or is there an opportunity that, and I know this is going to sound silly because I know that there isn't really a whole lot of available rental places anywhere in the world, but is there an opportunity that once they graduate and they're prepared to get back into society, is there an opportunity for them to move outside of the municipality? Or once they're in the transitional housing here, are they sort of bound to stay within our municipality or within the county at least the PELASS area?
Thank you for the question. No, they're certainly free to go anywhere they like. So if they've been successful in transitional housing and they say, hey, I have an aunt who lives in London and, you know, she's willing to help me and help me stay clean and all of those kinds of things. I need help to get there. We will certainly help them to get there. We want them to have their best foot forward and be where they are going to be their most successful. And if that's somewhere else with family or friends, we would certainly help them to do that because we want them to be successful and continue to be successful. So we're not going to say, no, we're not going to help you get to wherever you want to go. We want you to stay here and potentially slide backwards. So that's not what it's about. It's really about helping them to be able to move forward and to continue to move forward. So they're not locked into here. They would stop receiving services from us once they move from this municipality. But there's certainly, we would encourage them to be wherever they can be their best person.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think that's all I have. Is there anything else or anything that come out of my comments? Seeing none, I think, thank you, Scott and Lynn, for coming this evening. And I think the theme of this evening's meeting, I think you hit the nail on the head in the fact that we've been generations getting to where we're at. And there's no real quick fix. And there's no, I mean, we're going to try and manage the situation that we have. But there's no quick fix here, and there's no easy answers. And I mean, if there was, I'm sure that there'd be a lot of larger municipalities across this continent that would have used those opportunities to fix things. And I know that there's many municipalities across North America that are experiencing, have experienced what we're now experiencing as something new, but they've experienced it for many decades. So, but thank you for providing at least a path forward for some, and we know that we're probably not going to be able to help all, but thank you for providing a path forward for at least some to see if we can get some of them back on track. So thank you.
Thank you for inviting us, and we'd be happy to come back anytime if you have other questions.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Thank you very much. I think that's the trick to this is cooperation, right? And collaboration. So I'll look for a motion to note and receive the presentation of Lynn, Chenier and Scott Robertson from the Prince Edward, Lennox and Addington Social Services, Housing and Homeless conversation or presentation. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Martin. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Deputations, scheduled deputations with respect to new items, and I don't believe we have any of those, Madam Clerk. Moving on to deputations, items on the agenda, and I believe we do have one, Mr. Gavin Cross, with respect to encampments. So if Gavin can come up to the front and we'll do his presentation. Welcome, Gavin. I know you've been here before, but I'll run through the rules of engagement here again that in order to speak, you have to push the button. And I know that the folks at home are going to want to hear what you have to say. So as you're speaking, you have to hold the button down. When you're done speaking, you just let the button up. And then once you're done your presentation, just hang tight because we may have some questions for you. So whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for hearing my presentation. I want to thank PELASS for their presentation as well, even though it seems like the tail is wagging the dog in this situation. The council runs the town. Dear Council, I stand before you as a tax-paying resident of Napanee of almost 20 years. During that 20 years, whenever I walk my dog, I follow the same path, which is to head south on Center Street to River Road, across Pearl, into the paved paths behind the playground and the splash pad, and then down the hill, straight to the pavilion, where I drop off my dog's due, and then take the paved paths home. On the 18th of August this year, I was assaulted by two members of the homeless community and verbally threatened by a third who said that she was going to get a gun. I had to seek medical attention at the Napanee Hospital afterwards. I am very thankful that a portion of the assault was videotaped, as without proof of what happened, I am pretty sure that nothing would have been done. I've seen the homeless encampments grow in Napanee over the last few years. I've seen the needles left in the woods, in the parklands, in the playgrounds, and in the splash pad washroom alcoves. I have seen drinking and drug use in public. I've seen electricity theft on a grand scale on a near daily basis. I've seen the homeless park their cars next to their waterfront camping sites. I've heard the yells from the park at night. I've heard the non-registered dogs barking at all times of the day and night. And I've seen and heard the first responders always going to the park. I have seen people defecating in the park. In the past, I have reported what I could when I could. Nothing has been done by anyone. The police remain an integral part of keeping Napanee safe, yet they cite their inability to do anything because of a nebulous judgment out of Southern Ontario. The OPP leadership have placed the professional line officers in a position of reacting to situations instead of proactively preventing them. I have a proposal this evening that will give them options and enable them to be proactive and do their job. The greater town of Napanee is the rock. You are the rock of our community. And you bear the responsibility of managing the public spaces. But as well, you are responsible for ensuring that our community as a whole is safe. You are failing. The residents of Napanee should have the ability to feel safe in our green spaces. I also strongly feel that our homeless community has the same rights. And I'm going to say that again. I feel that the homeless community has the right to feel safe. I propose a solution that will resolve people's concern. I believe the town council should designate an area that would be a safe place and a safe space for the homeless. A place where they would be accepted and free to live their lifestyle in safety. A place where the police can take them if there are conflicts of any kind and if they find themselves without a place to stay at night. A place where they can go where they will be free from the public walking their dogs, a place free from children, tourists, concerts, and wild animals, a place where they can get assistance with any mental, physical, financial, or addiction issues. I strongly believe that this safe space falls within the mandate of council, and upon reading the Association of Municipalities reports and recommendations on homeless encampments published July 2nd, 2024, it would indicate to me to be a legal use of council's authority and will have almost zero setup and maintenance costs. I promise you that Mr. Norrie and I did not talk beforehand. I submit to council that there would be no safer place in Napanee for a homeless encampment than 99 Advance Avenue, a location within eyesight of the police, EMS, and fire services, a location where PELASS and Family Services of FLA is steps away from, a location where washroom services would be as readily available as any park. During inclement weather, a dry place and warm place to sleep is right there. Surely no more an appropriate place exists in the whole of Napanee. You cannot ban a group of people from a public space in Napanee. However, it seems to me that council can designate a place for the homeless to be. Everyone coming to Napanee should be free to visit our parks and public spaces. Nobody should be suffering from sleeping in the trees and roughing it in our parks when there was an alternate safe space that exists. Alternately, nobody should suffer from feeling not safe in our public spaces. There are options to get modular tenting from federal sources to 99 Advance Avenue. The Morningstar mission gets hundreds of thousands of dollars from the town, the county, and from charity to assist the homeless, and I'm sure they would support a safe central locations where they can provide their programs. Who could not be in favor of safety and dignity for everyone? There seems to be a lack of imagination and bold thinking. Let us please be bold. Would council propose a motion to vote on this subject tonight, or perhaps on the meeting on the 3rd of September? I would submit that doing nothing has already contributed to a murder in this town, and this latest incident, and plus whatever thousands of incidents the public is not aware of or haven't reported. May I ask, Mr. Mayor, what time this meeting is going to be on the 3rd?
I will refer to Madam Clerk with respect to that. However, there will be a public notification, and it may have gone out already if I'm not mistaken. So, but if it hasn't gone out already, I know it'll be out tomorrow morning. But can you help us with that, Madam Clerk? I know you did the booking for the facility.
Through your worship, the sign on our door right now says 7:00 p.m. based on that being our normal council meeting time. And I believe that's the time we've held other similar meetings at the arena.
And like I say, there will be a public announcement probably tomorrow to make sure that we reach as many of the people that not only that couldn't get in tonight, but others that may have watched this this meeting either tomorrow or the next day or sometime between now and the next Tuesday. So,
Thank you, sir.
sorry, are you done, Mr. Cross?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Just hang tight. Members of council, do you have any questions for Mr. Cross at all? Deputy Mayor Calver.
Mr. Cross, did the police give any indication when they were involved with your assault? Was the person charged with anything, or did you get to find any of that information out?
Yes, Deputy Mayor, one person was charged with assault.
And are they in custody now, or were they released?
From what I understand, Deputy Mayor, they were released the following morning, and the court date is in October.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Calvert. Is there any other questions or comments? Councilor Shank.
This question is for Alan, just so we can. Did we give any money in our budget to Morning Star mission last year?
Through your worship, no, I do not believe we did.
I just wanted to, so when you stated that the town is, giving money as the municipality, that was incorrect.
Thank you for the correction, Councilor.
Thank you, Councilor Shank. Is there any other questions or comments? Seeing none. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Councilor Martin.
Just a brief statement. Mr. Cross, surely you don't think that this council doesn't want the same things that you do. We're trying, and we've been working on coming up with something, and we're not going to stop trying. So, but I just want you to know, I'm appalled at what happened to you. It shouldn't happen in our town, but it did. But we do care. We really do. So I just didn't want you to think that. I know the residents expect us to do something, anything, and we are trying. I just want you to know we are trying. Thank you.
I know that you care, sir. I know the council cares. I know the town cares. I know that that people care. Please don't think that I don't think that any of you care, because I know that you do. But there are people living in our parks and sleeping near our children and near our tourists who don't care about anything or anyone, and they don't care about what anybody says, and they don't care about laws. They don't care about anything. So we need to do better for the residents and for the homeless, because I'm sure they get assaulted too. So let's come up with a plan. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Martin. Mr. Cross, I'm going to encourage you to stick around this evening. It's going to be a late evening. We've got some fairly heavy reports with respect to this homeless situation, and this is not by any stretch of the imagination, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. is we're not going to have any easy answers and we're not going to have any quick fixes to this, but we are going to take a path to try and to manage what we inherited. And so I would encourage you to stick around, listen to the reports, listen to the conversations that council is going to have. And by all means, I hope you do come on the 3rd of September, because we are really in its infancy of trying to resolve a very, very, very complex problem. And we're working on it. But hey, we're new to this game, not like a lot of other municipalities, but at least we're trying, and we're going to try and manage the situation as best that we can. And that's all we can do. You got to remember, we're a small municipality. We don't have the resources of the larger municipalities, but we're going to try. And with all due respect, it's not our mandate, but we do have an onus to try and help our public, help our citizens enjoy the community that we have here and that we've built here. So I would encourage you to listen to what's going to happen here this evening. Like I say, this evening is we've got a lot of business that we got to take care of. But this evening's meeting is really in its infancy of trying to deal with the situation that none of us want to see. It doesn't matter what side of the conversation you're on. None of us want to see. None of us want to be a part of. However, it's landed in our laps, and we're going to try and manage it as best we can. So I apologize if we're going to be here awful late, but that's what's going to happen, because, like I say, we've got a lot of road to cover this evening. And again, it's just a start. So thank you for coming this evening. Thank you for relating your incident, and you know, we're going to do what we can do. So thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With all due respect, this is not a problem in its infancy. This is a problem that's been here for years. Thank you, sir.
It's a problem in its infancy in our municipality, because I've been here a long time. It's a problem that's been in this country and in this continent forever. And but it's a problem that has presented itself to the point where, you know what, we don't even have a parks bylaw because we never needed one. But guess what? We're going to have one now. So that's why I say it's in its infancy as far as we're concerned. And and I hate to use the word homeless, because, like I say, the situation, the problem we're seeing now isn't just about homeless. There's a whole plethora of problems that are going on right now that have all decided to meet at the same time in the same place, be it mental health, be it drug addiction, be it erosion of social values, but they've all decided to get together all in one place. And we're living in that place right now. So bear with us. We're going to try and manage this as best we can, and we will get there. I just can't give you any guarantees as to the end point, because I don't think any of us have that end point right now. So thank you again for coming. I'll look for a motion to note and receive the deputation for Mr. Gavin Cross with respect to encampments. Moved by Councillor Norrie, seconded by Councillor Martin. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Next up, we have correspondence items on the agenda, and I don't believe, Madam Clerk, we have any of those. Moving on, we have items for consideration. Part 1, operational impacts of encampments on the town of Greater Napanee. And I believe, Mr. Grant, you're going to speak to that. When you get settled there, the floor will be yours. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and members of the public, and as well as our guests from PELASS. I appreciate you being here today. So, you know, today, as the mayor has mentioned, is the beginning of a conversation. And I wanted to start off by talking about, you know, some of the things that we're involved with and some of the impacts that we're seeing as a municipality and as an operation. So, you know, previous to being here, you know, I had the privilege of serving at the city of Hamilton, where we dealt with homelessness on a pretty significant scale. We dealt with many of the issues we're seeing here. We dealt with it for a long time. In 1 year, we doubled our housing budget. We discussed sanctioned encampments, which was raised today, which ranged in the cost from hundreds of thousands to millions to operate. We had encampment protocols. We had partnerships with the police. And, we came to the same conclusion that the big city mayors came to recently, which is this is a problem that is bigger than the people in this room. And it's a problem that municipalities across Ontario and across the country are struggling to manage. But, I can tell you in Napanee, to date, I've had the privilege of sitting at tables with the OPP, with PELASS, mental health, the fire department, paramedics, and our conversations are about how we can try to manage an issue which we aren't necessarily able to solve. We all have different mandates, everything from law enforcement to land use and park use with the municipality to first response. And I'm pleased to say that there is a willing partnership among all the major institutions in town to address this issue together. Because in my experience, in different municipalities where I've dealt with this issue, it's only together that we're actually going to be able to address this issue. In the coming weeks, I'll be sitting down with the CAO of the county of Lennox and Addington, and we're actually discussing some of their plans around affordable housing and how we might be able to contribute to the solution. And my intention is to bring that before council, just to give you an update on those conversations and to seek a mandate for further conversations. But in terms of the impact on the municipality itself, we're starting to see it have an impact on services and our ability to provide services, and we're starting to see an impact on our budgets. And I would suggest as we move forward, we're going to have to plan for that. Everything from bylaw services, which anywhere ranges with our bylaw personnel from 20 to 60% of their time a week with boots on the ground. That doesn't include meetings, discussions with others to plan for how we're going to address this issue. I know our fire department has responded to issues, including an encampment fire. Our parks department, our public works department. It's a difficult issue to tackle, and it is one that is going to continue to require the cooperation of every institution in town. It's also going to require us to be prepared to invest time and resources. What you're going to see later this evening is what's within our mandate to do. In terms of our ability to manage homeless encampments on public property, it is limited. And what we dealt with in Hamilton and we're dealing with here is case law. And case law would dictate that unless people have a specific place to go, you aren't able to remove them or ask them to leave all of your public spaces. Now, there are options, and we're going to present them later this evening, about how we can manage the issue in some of our spaces, but we will not be able to manage them in all of our spaces, but we can try to strike a balance. I can tell you I've been on the phone a lot since I've been here on this specific issue, having conversations with citizens. The business community was kind enough to raise the issue as we were talking about it. About various issues. And, I was on the phone with the detachment commander of the OPP in town as recently as this morning. And the conversations continue and strategies continue on how to manage the issue. And I just thought that I would put on the, council's radar and that of the public, the impact it's starting to have. We're going to have to make some decisions coming forward about levels of investment or levels of service as we aim to manage this issue, whether it be being able to respond to bylaw complaints unrelated to homelessness, property standards and the like, that's being impacted. I know that, on some related issues with the fire department and responding to overdose related calls, those are going up. and looking how we can support the men and women of the fire department is something that the fire chief and I have had discussions on. But I did want to bring it to your attention that as we enter the budget process, this is something that we're going to have to consider because it is now starting to have a material impact. And I expect that impact to continue. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions before moving on to what we're going to propose this evening as a first step, I'm sure, of many to try to manage the issue.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Is there any questions for Mr. Grant with respect to his presentation at this point? Go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
Through you, your worship, just one question, Mr. Grant, and that is with the increasing interaction with municipal staff, whether it's parks, Aggie through bylaw, or contracted, have our staff been trained in the handling of A, drug paraphernalia? And B, have they been all given the proper PPE to be wearing when they're engaging with the people that are living in the homeless encampments? Like, has there been, and I know from reading the bylaw, and I did the proposed bylaw, it is very sensitive to these issues and to the dignity of all parties, as Mr. Cross did mention in his presentation. But is that factored into how this is dealt with on a daily basis?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the council, those are the conversations and the preparations and the work that we're doing as we speak. So whenever we're dealing with hazardous material and in cases where we're removing encampments, sometimes that will be part of the equation as hazardous material. We will use the appropriate measures and equipment to do that. In terms of training and interactions, these are the things that are having the material impact and things that we're going to have to invest in beyond the things that we're doing today. So yes, it's a consideration. Yes, it's things that we're working on. Yes, it's things that we're doing. And yes, there are things we need to do to improve, to better support the men and women in the municipality who are dealing with an issue that candidly, as the mayor has pointed out, nobody wants to deal with. And it is our obligation to deal with. And so as we go through, resource discussions in the coming months, you can expect that this is something that I'm going to bring forward because we're going to need your help.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to the CAO. Thank you very much for this report. But my question to you is on monetary question is, how do we even start to budget for this?
Thank you, Councillor, and through the mayor to you, Councillor. It starts with what we've done is starting to code when we're dealing with encampment issues. We're starting to code that time to get a sense of what we're already spending. To ease administrative burden, I'm not asking the team to code every thing that we're doing in terms of meetings and strategies and discussions and phone calls, and I'm certainly not coding my time. But having an idea of what is it taking already to manage some of these issues. And, one of my largest concerns right now is our capacity in bylaw services. And I would suggest, and what you're going to see from me is bringing forward a report requesting more resources in that area specifically, because that is an area where we're being impacted, I would say the most at this point. But what we're going to bring forward is, here's what we're spending just when we're out in the community, specifically dealing with the issues with boots on the ground, so to speak. We will also give you a sense of the other things that we're doing, and the senior leadership team is going to do our best to put a number to it, to tell you this is what we think we need to manage this issue. And obviously we'll try to keep budgets in mind and keep things affordable, but we're going to be talking about the service levels we're able to provide, and the options we're going to be giving is investments required or service level adjustments. But it starts, Counselor, to answer your question, with us already coding what we're doing to get a sense of where we're at and where we think we're going.
Go ahead, Councilor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship. Just a follow-up question to that is that I'm struggling with the fact of we don't even know where we're going to be going with this, or what options that we have, or how we're going to provide some type of a solution to this issue. So until we have that in order, we have no idea what this is going to cost or how we can even put a number towards it. So I know tonight we're going to be working on a parks bylaw that's going to isolate some things, and of course, Tuesday night too, we'll hear from the public and get some other wonderful ideas, much like what we did from Mr. Cross tonight. But it's very infantile right now to where we're starting from. Like it's as we're saying, it's so new on this, and we need to have that direction before we can put a dollar towards it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, I would say this is where mandates come in. So we can have a sense of the impact it's having on our specific mandate with what we're responsible for in terms of responding to bylaw and, property and parks and cleanup. We know what that is. The OPP will know what their budgets are for enforcement. PELASS and social services will know what they need to do in terms of the services they can provide and the budgets they have. And so that is why it's so imperative that we stand candidly shoulder to shoulder with our partners to understand how we can collectively manage the issue in each of our pieces. And as we sit at a strategy table, it's not only talking about the individuals that were, collectively that are being provided services and how to manage, the situation they're in, but also the other effects, whether it be use of parks, impact on first response and law enforcement, and the various impacts, talking, hearing from the community about the impacts that we're not even aware of or that we are aware of and can't quantify as yet. I would say that we will have a sense of what we need for incremental improvement within our own mandate and area, and we'll have a sense of what the collective ability is to address the issue with the continued discussions with our partners, and that's how we're going to move forward to the best of our ability, Councillor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Pennell. Is there any other questions of Mr. Grant before I move on? Go ahead, Councilor Shank.
So what I need is data. I'm sorry, I'm a data-driven guy, type of guy here. So Matthew, is there any way that you can contact I know you've been contacted already, but the detachment commander, all right? How many guys are on the drug unit in Napanee? All right. And if they've laid a charge, has the Crown not prosecuted that charge? I know I'm not going to probably get that data, but maybe they'll give you that data, because I'm just trying to find out if you have a substance abuse problem, all right? And I've heard from other residents in the town that, everybody said they've seen this and seen that and seen this. And OPP, if they lay a charge and that individual's still there, all right, you can have another person who do assault, all right, to Mr. Cross, and he's out the next day, you know what I mean? And then all I'm saying is, and if there's drugs, which we know are related with some of these homelessness, why on earth is something else not being done? And let's give the tools to the OPP that they're being done, so to find out, is the federal Crowns, are they dropping the ball because they're not charging it, they're doing their work, but you can only, what's the sense of them doing something if the other end of the party's not doing anything? I need more data to find out where the missing link is here, because if you see somebody on a crack pipe, all right, and he's still there, and is that legal now? So if that's legal, then why isn't it? I always thought it was illegal. So why isn't anything being done? All right. And if the OPP are not getting supported at the other end, I just want to find out where the disconnect is. And with that data, we can find out where where something's going, and maybe we can solve some of those problems, because I mean, with substance abuse problems, then there's other problems that go along with that line. I don't need if you could find that out, that would for Tuesday or whenever we're gonna have another, it's not gonna be solved all tonight, but let's put the heat where the heat needs to be done, where the disconnect is.
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Shank, I can answer that in two parts. So, first part would be on the local level. And what I would say is the various institutions in town, including PELASS who's here today, have agreed on the need to collectively information share and to come up with collective solutions and how we can each contribute. And a lot of those will be data driven, because many of those pieces of information live in different places, and how we can manage this issue on the local level. On the larger scale, I would turn to the recent communications from the big city mayors in Ontario that describe this, and I would agree with it, as the largest public policy failure in our lifetime. And it's a combination of affordable housing, of an opioid crisis, of a number of things that's going to take a number of different parties. And, when I take a page out of their book, is to solve the problem is going to take both a provincial and federal investment of time and resources. And until that day, I would say that on a local level, we've agreed to do our best to try to manage the problem that candidly is beyond any organization within Napanee, Greater Napanee, to solve in itself. We can do our best to manage it. I do know both from my previous place of work and, from my colleagues across the province and the country, that there are large efforts afoot to seek resources and help for mental health programming, for what we called wraparound services. And so when people are provided housing, making sure they have the mental health and addiction support and the various services that are needed to help people be successful. And in the absence of our ability to solve that locally, because it's a large issue, we do have some tools at our disposal that we can look at on how to manage this issue. Because I've heard from many members of council in individual conversations and phone calls that you're getting the same phone calls that we're getting on the staff level about people saying, why can I not go into my park? Why am I watching, people shower naked in a splash pad? Why am I, trying to navigate needles, all of those things? We are as concerned as the people who are calling us, and within the laws and the case law and our abilities, we're going to do our best to manage it.
Thank you, Councilor Shank. Is there any other questions for Matthew with respect to his presentation this evening? And I know that Matthew has a very open door. So if there's anything that comes out of this evening that we need to talk to him, I know we can talk to him. But go ahead, Councilor Hicks.
Through you, Your Worship. Thank you. Mr. Grant, you've used two words consistently through this: manage and solve. They are two very different scenarios. You are absolutely right. The best that we can do at this level is mitigate and manage and keep all the balls in the air. But alone, we are not going to solve this problem. We're not going to solve it in Napanee. We're not going to solve it in Lennox and Addington. We're not going to solve it in Ontario until every single level of government is teed up and willing and not looking for the glory. It's not about looking for the glory like I came up with the best idea. It is going to have to be a joint effort at every level to solve it. So I commend our staff and yourself on everything they have been doing up until this point to manage and mitigate with emergency services. It has to be one of the hardest jobs in the course of their day-to-day work is dealing with these complaints. I mean, we get the phone calls, but they're the ones that are out there actually face to face with the people living in these encampments and dealing with the residents. So I'd just like to publicly thank our staff because I think they deserve that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Is there anything else for Mr. Grant? Seeing nothing, we'll look for a motion to note and receive the presentation from Mr. Grant with respect to operational impacts of encampments on the town of Greater Napanee. Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Hicks. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Next, Executive Services, Proposed Parks and Public Spaces Bylaw and Encampment Response Protocol. And I see Madam Clerk moving up to the front. Jess, whenever you're settled in, we'll hand you the floor.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start us off and then turn things over to Jessica. In a lot of the conversations that we've had with council and for the input we've had from the public, one of the things we've heard loud and clear is, what are we going to do to try to deal with this issue? And this today is what we're looking to put forward as at least our part and the beginning of our part on how we can manage this issue. And so what we're going to present today is we're recommending be subject to public consultation because we believe that we need to hear from the community and their ideas. But it's our effort to manage as best we can what I'll deem incompatible use, but interactions within park spaces that are becoming incredibly challenging. We've heard some of those challenges this evening. And also respecting, the experience of other cities and what they've gone through and what they've learned. Respecting recent court decisions about what we're able to do. And candidly, what we're able to do is try to minimize as best we can negative interactions within certain park areas, but not every park area. We have an obligation under case law, which has been upheld a few different times, that if there is an inability for individuals to shelter elsewhere, there has to be a place for them in public space to stay. It has to be close to services. But the municipality does have the ability to put certain parameters in place, distance from playgrounds, distance from daycares, even up to and including specific areas, provided it does not put a blanket over the issue and saying nowhere is allowed. And so to her credit, the clerk has, put together a bylaw, learning from other organizations and other municipalities who've been through and are going through our experience, because this is everybody, for your consideration. And then what we recommend is for the public's consideration. With that, I'll turn things over to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Go ahead, Jess.
Thank you, Your Worship.
What volume? Deputy Mayor Calver. Again, you have to use your microphone, Brian, but what we can do is I would ask that maybe Madam Clerk and Mr. Grant, if you could just speak a little louder, it would be much appreciated. I know you're speaking into the mics, but it would be much appreciated if just so everyone in the body of the council chambers can hear. So
My apologies. I can certainly do that, Mr. Mayor.
thank you. That's better. Thank you.
Thank you.
So through Your Worship, I just want to preface this all by saying that the documents attached to this report are in draft format because I believe it's easier to have a productive conversation if we've got something concrete to start the conversation, but this is absolutely not intended to be the final version of what this will look like. The purpose of this report is to outline why we believe that implementing a Parks and Public Spaces bylaw is the step we need to take to have some effective tools so that we can address the concerns we're hearing from residents. As is noted in the report, we as the town do not currently have a bylaw that restricts public camping on public lands. And so under provincial legislation, how our bylaw officers' authorities work is they need to be explicitly empowered to enforce something through a bylaw, and that bylaw needs to derive its authority from the Municipal Act. If we can't find that authority in the Municipal Act and council doesn't delegate it through a bylaw, then our officer can't do anything. The other thing noted in the report is that the case law, as Mr. Grant alluded to, is evolving, and while council has broad authority to regulate what's happening in your community, that authority ends when it comes up against a provincial and federal legislation. Section 7 charter rights grant every person the right to life, liberty, and security of the person, and the courts have found that that extends to a right to provide shelter for oneself on public lands if there's no other option. So whatever we do as a bylaw cannot exceed that constitutional limit that has been set, except within reasonable limited capacities for the public good. So it's just the context that we're working within here. And what we're seeking to do is walk that line between ensuring that we are respecting the human rights of our unhoused residents while also ensuring that our other residents feel that they can use the services that are funded through their taxes safely and for their intended purposes. So the proposed bylaw is intended to also do a lot more than just address camping. It talks about a lot of things. General rules of behavior for your parks. You know, your animal cannot be harassing other people in the park. You can't be cutting trees down, can't be drinking alcohol openly in a park, all those sorts of normal expectations for shared public use of a public space. We want this bylaw to be useful beyond just this one specific issue. But we do recognize that most people's attention and focus is going to be about our response to encampments. So as noted in the report, our legal counsel has advised that constitutionally, if we have a blanket ban on all camping on all municipal property, or even if we set a limit on our spaces that says 100 meters separation from every sidewalk, walking trail, playground, school, at some point you make the whole map red, you can't, it's not going to be constitutionally able to be held up. We're not saying that the exact boundaries we've got proposed are the right thing. We want to hear from the community. We will also want to hear from the people who are currently living in our parks, what impacts this will have on them, because it's important to get full input from everybody before we make any decisions here. One thing I did want to flag, the only reason we proposed the conservation park would be if we were going to dedicate one park as wholly off limits. That would be the one, is just based on volume of calls. 43% of all the calls we've gotten have been specifically about Conservation Park, followed by Springside Park, and then our other parks are around that 5% volume of calls. So it wasn't any particular agenda on staff's part, just about the volume of calls we were receiving. And then just one other thing I wanted to highlight within the report, and then I will turn it over to questions and comments from you folks, is on the mapping there. Again, that's just because some people, myself included, understand things better when it's visual. The green boxes on here are the services and amenities that we do need to make sure that we let people, it has to be a reasonably accessible walking distance to those services. We can't say, oh, well, there's a park up in Roblin, that's fine. People can all put their tents up in Roblin. It does actually have to still be somewhat reasonably accessible to those services, just as one of the factors we're considering.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and I apologize if I missed it, but maybe you could speak to, I know we heard from Mr. Cross earlier about putting everybody into one area. Do we have an opinion on that as well? Or is there something you can share with respect to that?
Through your worship, I think that is something that I know we've heard that opinion from a lot of people. Mr. Grant could speak more directly to the experience of what that's like to administer. I do know from what we've heard locally, as well as what has been the experience of other people, is that some people just won't go for that. They won't feel safe there because they have a history with somebody else who's there, or there's some other reason why that's not safe for them. And we would be overstepping our limits to say, no, you're forced to go here. This is the only place you're allowed to set a tent up.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Grant.
To add to the clerk's comments, so what you're referring to, Mr. Mayor, is what is referred to by many municipalities as a sanctioned encampment. There are some municipalities, not many, that have gone that route, Waterloo being one of them, and that's actually how we ended up with some of the case law we have today. The cost of that is fairly significant. It generally requires sanitation, security. It often requires provision of services. There are many that say it does have some benefits. I would suggest that doing that at just solely the municipal level is beyond our mandate and beyond our resources. And the other item with that is, once you've created that, it is considered in many ways a facility in and of itself, and you assume all responsibility for largely what happens there. I would suggest that is beyond our individual ability. But as we discuss this as numerous organizations, many of those similar kinds of issues about how we manage this will come up. And I imagine this will be a topic of conversation, though I've not heard it as an idea proposed as a main form of management for the issue to date.
Great, thank you, Mr. Grant. I guess we can open up to the floor for questions. Madam Clerk? Who wants to start? Go ahead, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thank you very much for this report. And I'm just going to skip right through majority of it and go right to the encampment response protocol that we have here. And section E is the sensitive use areas. I'm just wondering where these dimensions came from. Like, for instance, on or within 5 meters of a walking path, trail, or parking lot. I just seem to think that that's a little small, that dimension, or if we look at 50 meters from a school or daycare. So my question is, I just want to know where they come from, and are obviously these must be adjustable, are they?
Through your worship, yes, for sure. This is one of the things we specifically want to do consultation on. This was just a starting point. We reviewed every publicly available encampment protocol in Ontario we could find, and this was sort of where most of them landed. Some, I know London, I believe, set higher buffers around playgrounds. I think they went to 100 meters on playgrounds, but not 100 meters on everything. Again, that's just as a starting point to say, what are other people doing? What have they successfully implemented? Let's start there, but then have a conversation with council and our residents.
I would add to that through you, Mr. Mayor. One of the bylaws that we looked at actually was the city of Hamilton. I was part of the team that was helping to develop that bylaw, and some of the rationale between the distances is, what is the distance of amenities from each other? So if you go X number of meters from a playground and then X number of meters from a trail and a sidewalk, you start to see areas disappear pretty quickly. And so what we encountered, both with some of the legal proceedings we were involved with or discussions, was making sure that all of those different distances or restrictions, if you will, acted in concert, and that we didn't have unintended consequences by creating a blanket over certain areas that we were quite sure wouldn't stand up to legal challenge.
Okay, thank you. So just as a follow-up with that, and we're talking about blanket areas, and 100 meters seems to come up pretty quick. I'm just looking at the map here, and I see that Springside Trail is red, and we would say that it would probably be sorry, what did I say, 5 meters right off of the trail. What would be the harm or what would be the implications of making that so that whole hill would be an area where we couldn't have it? So that whole trail area would be free from any of encampments. What would happen in that particular case?
Through your worship, that's certainly something that I suspect will come up through the consultation discussions, just because that is our second highest area of calls that we're getting. Typically what you tend to see is the first priority on any of these incompatible sensitive use areas is children. That's why your playgrounds, your splash pad, your schools, your daycares goes first. At some point, you have to leave somewhere. And maybe 5 meters is not the right number, but I do think legally we would struggle to block off that entirety of Springside Park. Just because it is the largest green space that we have available, and we have a large number of persons who need to, if you start eliminating your big parks, you're going to overload your small parks, and 14 tents that can be spread out right now across a lot of areas. If you force them all into the lot behind the Mission or the lawn in front of 99 Advance Avenue, it's a lot more concentrated, bigger impact than if you allow a little bit more room in a few other places, is the main thinking there.
Thank you. And we hear that there's going to be public consultation. How is that going to look? How are we going to conduct this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I can tell you what some of our current thinking is on this. And we are, if you will, taking a page out of the book of others who have also done this, some of the consultations I've been involved with. So we want to be able to address this in multiple formats. We want to be able to give education portion both online, have those education, I guess, materials available at points of contact within the municipality, specifically ask questions, both in both formats, have an in-person meeting, similar to what is being called next week for a special deputation, where people can come forward, hear from the individuals and the organizations that are dealing with this particular issue. We could go over to make sure, what we're looking for and what input that we're looking to receive and what we're going to do with it. And then also give members of the community the opportunity to ask questions. And that might be one meeting, it might be more than one meeting, depending on the level of interest. Judging by this evening, the level of interest won't be small. But on a large scale or on a high level, it's going to be online consultation, possibilities for people to provide, written inputs. It's going to be the ability to ask questions in public, both at a microphone and the ability to hand questions via paper, because not everyone feels comfortable speaking in a public setting. Also making sure we're making full use of our communications resources to make sure that these opportunities are well publicized on multiple channels, be radio, newspaper, social media, whatever we can do, reaching out to our specific partners to make sure they're aware of that opportunity, and then bringing that information back to ensure that council has that. But in addition to that, reaching out to individual stakeholders, both the partners that we work with, reaching out to some of our partners to understand how best to engage the people that are living encamped, so we can get their perspective on what's being proposed, so that we can give council a full perspective of what people think about what's being proposed, and then suggest any amendments at that time.
Thank you. Your response seems to be well thought out. So this is something that's been in the works for a while. And if we do that if we go the route that you suggested, I think that we'll cover everything. And I truly hope that our communication communication strategy will stick to what you said, because I think that it will cover everybody in this municipality. And I hope that anybody has a concern will speak up and so that we could hear that. So I appreciate your answer.
You're welcome. And just to add to that, I think my my perspective when I was speaking with our communication staff was, if we overdo it, I won't be upset. I would just like to make sure that everyone's aware of the opportunity, has the ability to participate and to influence, the final recommendation that we have for council's consideration. I have a little experience with communication, so I will lend my own expertise to that effort. But that is the intention, Councillor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pennell. Deputy Mayor Cower, go ahead.
Okay, I'm looking at the map here and I get it. We have to have someplace for everybody to live and call home. But I would really, really like to see Conservation Park and Springside Park and Trail eliminated off of that. We've got a big housing development being built. Last thing we need is, people wanting to come into the town and look out their window overview and see more tents. I'd just like to see if we could, eliminate the use of Conservation Park and Springside Park and Trail altogether, if that's a possibility.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Deputy Mayor, and then I'll turn things over to Jessica if she has any other comments. I will say that what the final map looks like or sensitive areas look like is the privilege of council to decide. We will give you our best advice based on where we think our legal obligations begin and end, what the level of how we feel the bylaw itself will stand up to legal challenge should that happen, as well as what the public has asked for in terms of our consideration of sensitive spaces. At which point it is council's privilege to make a decision with consideration of all that information. But Deputy Mayor, I hear you. And I personally don't necessarily disagree with you, but we'll make sure that we give you advice from every angle so you can make the best informed decision possible. If Jessica has anything else to add.
Okay, through your worship, thank you. I know we come up with the ideas, you guys make sure we stay legal. I appreciate that, thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cower. Do you have any further to add on that, Jess, or?
Through your worship, no, I believe Mr. Grant covered everything.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Go ahead, Councillor X.
Thank you. Through your worship, 10 meters from intake protection zone does not seem like enough to me. I think it should be more because it is water and you need water for life. And if there's any threat to our water, then I think it should be expanded, that particular one for sure.
Through your worship, we are making a note of all the comments we're hearing tonight. And again, we'll also continue to hear comments. We do expect this will be the area that gets the most feedback for sure.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hicks. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Madam Clerk and Mr. Grant I know there's been a tremendous amount of work gone into this. You can see it's a very extensive bylaw, but my concern when I got looking at this is, you basically want to exclude Conservation Park entirely, which is going to just simply move the problem to other parks. It's going to move it to Springside Park, move it to King Street Park perhaps. And I have big concerns about that. And although you've addressed, it's kind of a funny thing because you're not designating Springside Park or King Street Park as a non-area, and yet all of King Street Park is a sensitive area. I mean, the whole park, right from the minute you enter it, it's a sports field. Kids play soccer there. There's playground equipment for young kids there. There's the boat ramp. There isn't 1 square inch of that park that's not sensitive. So I don't know why that wouldn't be included as a sensitive area where it wouldn't be allowed at all. That's it's just one of those things that I just I can't wrap my head around. I don't understand what you're saying on that.
Were you going to comment, Madam Clerk? Or?
If you don't mind. So through your worship, some of that may change through the consultation process. For example, if the buffer on sports fields gets any bigger than the proposed 20 meters, then yes, I think all the blue on the little sliver of blue that there is on King Street Park would disappear. That's part of why we are doing the consultation. People still wouldn't be permitted to camp within those restrictions around the playgrounds or the sports fields in King Street Park. So if they could get out a measuring tape and find a small corner in the park, I suppose that's the difference that would be there by not specifically listing the whole park. But appreciate your perspective on this, and I'm sure it's something that will come up more through the conversation.
Yep, go ahead. Go ahead, Councilor Martin.
I appreciate what you're saying, and I understand why you're doing this, and we're trying to fashion a bylaw that is legal. I mean, I understand the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms is the big problem here, and we have to have a place for these people to go if we don't allow them in another area. But honest to goodness, I can take you down. Mr. Grant, you and I were down there when I gave you the tour. I don't know if you can recall the park, but there's not, like I say, there's not 1 square inch of that park that wouldn't be a sensitive area. So I don't know why there would be any blue there at all. And Springside Park, I mean, everybody from out of town basically use that park and access the boardwalk. I just can't see eliminating Conservation Park as an area for the homeless, and yet Springside Park is okay. That's another area that I just don't, I'm having a hard time with that one as well, so.
And through your worship, as I said, this was just a suggestion to start a conversation, and it's just based on numbers. That's where 42% of our complaints came from. So that's the one we put on there. But we very likely will hear different things as we go through the consultation. None of this is set in stone. I just want to make sure I'm stressing that.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I appreciate your answer to that. And like I say, I understand what you're trying to do. And there's been a whole lot of work gone into this, and I know you're going to do more. So I appreciate your answers, and I appreciate you talking about this. And I appreciate you listening to me, because I know Springside Park and King Street Park is both in my ward, but I'm interested in all of Greater Napanee and solving that problem. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Martin. I think it's becoming very, very, very obvious that we're going to be walking a tightrope here. I know that other municipalities have attempted to find a resolution, and they've been struck down in Superior Court. So it's going to be a challenge. There's no doubt in my mind this is going to be a challenge, and we are really walking a tightrope here, and that's why we're seeing what we're seeing tonight. And as Madam Clerk said, there's nothing written in stone by any stretch of the imagination, and we've got a long ways to go on this, but we have to start somewhere with a map and to try and establish. The bottom line is we want to try and establish what are the most serious areas that we want to protect, the most sensitive areas, is because again, I think we've all come to the conclusion that we're not going to be able to protect everything, but we need to protect something, and that's why these conversations are going to continue. So go ahead. I think Councillor Shank had a comment, and then I can go to Councillor Serpinal.
We can beat this dead horse till whatever, but the point is Jessica and Matthew and the staff that have done this work. I know you've talked to legal numerous times and to find out what you can, what you can't. I greatly appreciate it, as long as we're being proactive, not reactive. All right, I know this is gonna get bounced around for hours to come. All right, not in my backyard and not here, not there, but what can we do legally, what we can't do legally? That's the reason why staff will advise us what we can do, because I agree with Councilor Martin, I agree with everything that everybody has said, but we have to start somewhere, like our mayor said, so I commend you for it, and we're gonna discuss this on another day, and it's getting late, unless you want to stay here till 2 o'clock in the morning, I decide we better move on.
Yeah, we have a comment from Councillor Pennell, and I think we've all accepted the fact this is going to be a long and involved process. So go ahead, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. For Tuesday night, when we have this meeting, the SPC is very hard for avionics, for listening, for graphics, that sort of thing. What can we expect from staff for the general public to be able to see what we're talking about? I know that there's people in the gallery trying to look at the computers to see the maps and that sort of thing. Just wondering if we could have storyboards, or are we going to have handouts, or what are we going to have for these people?
So through your worship, the closest comparison I can give on this will be, if you recall last year, we had a full house to talk about a rail trail, and that's about what we can expect for this meeting as well, where we will have a sign-in sheet at the door. Put your name on the list if you want to talk. I'll take the list up to the mayor at the start of the meeting, and council will just be there to hear what people have to say. We do believe we can live stream this time around. It's not going to be great video quality, but it will be video quality. And we can certainly have the staff print out some big copies of maps, some small copies of maps, some handouts for people to have to help with communication.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Pennell. We have to keep in mind as well, Tuesday night is going to be an opportunity for us to listen, for us to hear the public. There's going to be other opportunities later on where we're going to have our partners there. There's going to be other opportunities for public consultation where, when this thing starts to come together, we're going to want to hear from the public again. So, but Tuesday night is just to provide everybody in the municipality an opportunity to tell their story, to tell us what they feel about things. And so, again, it's baby steps at this thing, but they're very important baby steps. So I think we do need to take those steps. So, Councillor Hicks.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. This is an open question to both yourself and to Madam Clerk. Just for the benefit of the public and those in the gallery, if you are attending Tuesday night and you put your name on the list to speak, you will have how many minutes? And
think-
it will be enforced. I'm assuming.
We've been down this trail before, and I started to use the trail word, but we've been down this trail, Madam Clerk. If you could, I know we stick to a very tight schedule. So what was that, 4 minutes or 5 minutes or something like that?
Through your worship, I will have to go back to confirm what we did for those meetings. I believe where it's multiple people on the same topic, we can set it at 5 minutes per person just to try to avoid repetition. But the maximum under the bylaw is 10 minutes per person. And then if it's, depending on volume, ability at the discretion of council to adjust that. But I will see what we set for the last couple of meetings we've done like this.
And we will well publicize it when we put the notification out. So we'll make sure that all that information's on the notification.
Thank you. And I have one further thing. I do believe that there is a projector screen at SPC that can be pulled down from the ceiling. So perhaps we could just put the map for the benefit of everyone. Printouts are good, but just to have the map up on the screen might, as a starting point for conversation, or at least at the beginning of the meeting or prior to starting. Just a thought. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Councillor Hicks. Is there anything else? Any other questions or comments with respect to the report and the bylaw that we're looking at instituting? Sarah, go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've just realized as we're sitting here, there's one other piece of this encampment protocol that I do want to highlight. the examples we're pulling from other municipalities, they've all been single-tier municipalities where the municipality owns all of the services involved. So for our proposed draft here, we've had to change a lot of language to reflect that we will be asking and hopefully collaborating with those service agencies, but we certainly don't have the authority to direct what their actions are going to be. So that is going to be something we can only control the pieces that we actually have jurisdiction over. And the rest of it is just going to be hopefully continuing to have good partnership and collaboration with those other agencies.
Great. Thank you, Madam Clerk. And you bring up a very good point with respect to even the case law is single tier, is based on single tier decisions, right? So we are venturing into some land here that you know, it's foreign to most of us or in most municipalities in this province. So thank you for mentioning that. Is there anything else, any other questions with respect to the presentation or the bylaw? Seeing none, we'll look for a motion to note and receive the presentation of Madam Clerk with respect to the Executive Services Proposed Parks and Public Spaces Bylaw and Encampment Response Protocol. Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Hicks. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed, motion's carried. I think at this point, we're well past 9 o'clock. We're going to take about a 15-minute break. We've still got a long evening ahead of us, and I think a break at this point would be good. Welcome back, everyone. Continuing on with our agenda, we're going to move on to unfinished business, and I don't believe that we have any unfinished business, Madam Clerk. It's our administrative consent agenda. First up is the council minutes for the, and before we get started, we're going to pull out the matter that Councillor Hicks is going to declare a conflict in, which is 9.7, and we'll deal with that a little bit later on, Councillor Hicks. But we'll work our way through these matters first, and then we'll ask you to leave when it's appropriate. So first up is the council minutes for the regular session of council for July 23rd, 2024, and the special session of council August 12th, 2024. Is there anything in those minutes that anyone would like to highlight or speak to or has any questions about? Seeing none. Committee minutes, waste diversion, and municipal heritage committees. Is there anything in those minutes? And Councillor Martin, I know you're the council member for both those committees. Is there anything in those minutes that you would like to highlight?
Yeah, the report speaks for itself muchly, but I would like to say that our last waste diversion committee meeting was excellent. And actually, I got to thank Andrew Gerard for his excellent presentation at the committee meeting. And there's a lot coming forward with the Blue Box program, and 2025 is our transition year. So, but my hope is after our next committee meeting, we can bring forward a report to council on recommendations, and council can decide on those recommendations. But I won't go any farther on that. I won't take up too much time since we're running late.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Does anybody else have any questions or comments with respect to those two committee reports? Seeing none. Correspondence for information items dated August 27th, 2024. Is there any of those correspondence for information items that anyone would like to pull out or have a conversation or speak to? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Cowart.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we support the Flemington, Wyoming request, if this is the time for that.
Yeah, I think we've got it later on the agenda,
Okay.
Deputy Mayor Cowart.
Yep,
So,
thank you.
is there anything else with respect to the correspondence items dated August 27, 2024? Seeing none. The Best and Bash naming rights agreement with respect to this report. Is there anything in that agreement that anyone would like to have a conversation about or speak to? Seeing none. Quarter two financial update. Is there anything in the quarter? Oh, Councillor Hicks.
Through you, your worship, Best and Bash Arena is what was decided on. Is that what I read that correctly? Okay,
That's what's painted on the center ice of the rink, so I'm guessing that's probably what
Okay.
it is. Yep.
thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Is there anything further? Seeing none. The quarter two financial update. Is there anything in this report that anyone would like to speak to or highlight? Seeing none. We're going past the infrastructure services report. Council inquiries follow-up, SOS in-kind donation. Is there anything in this report that anyone would like to speak to or talk about? Councillor Nari.
Yes, just, I apologize. We just saw this last weekend. So I had a meeting with SOS, and they're, for the most of the in-kind, they're pleased with, the 1680 for the skate, the 500 for the mapping for the house tour, the 500 for advertising. I'm not sure what that's for, but they accept that. For the move, which will be November, they're moving to a larger facility in the school. And I think the town said they'd supply $1,500 worth of staff time to move the furniture. They said it should be 2,000, which will cut down on the financial owing and build up the, so I don't know how we're working all this, but they do not need any of the hall, any of the freebie of the halls. They've got plenty of room with the kindergarten room and that, so that I've eliminated that one. So later on in the meeting, I'm going to have a notice of motion so that it can be discussed for 2 weeks and then bring back.
And I think that's good. I think that's a good idea, Councillor Nori, and I know that staff are already sort of involved in some of those discussions anyway. So I think we can address it at that point. So thank you.
Okay.
Activity reports, financial services, August of 2024. Is there anything in the financial services activity report that anyone would like to speak to or ask any questions about? Seeing none, but I see Ms. Hamill's got her hand up. So is there anything you'd like to highlight in there, Alan?
Yes, thank you. I would just like to note a correction in one of the numbers. The tax sales numbers for 2024 were listed in the report at 175. Or sorry, 125. That number should be 71.
Great. Thanks, Alan. Is there any questions of Alan with respect to her presentation there? Seeing none. Activity report, community and corporate services, August 2024. Is there anything in that report that anyone has any questions about or would like to highlight? Mr. Brown, did you have anything that you would like to add or no?
I just thought that it'd be a good time to mention that the summer students, this is their last week. I just want to thank them all for their hard work, and we can't do everything that we do in the summer months without their help. So we wish them the best of luck as they go back to school, and thank them for all their hard work.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. And it's hard to believe that the summer's over. So when the students go back to school, that means it's over, isn't it? So thank you for noting that, and thank you to the students that they came to work for us and dedicated their summer to working and helping make the municipality a better place. So thank you. And I think that's all the reports that we have with respect to the consent agenda, other than the one that we pulled out. So we're looking for. Oh, do I? Yes, I do. I didn't go down far enough. Activity report, infrastructure services, August 2024. Is there anything in that activity report that anyone would like to speak to or highlight? Mr. Gerard, go ahead.
Yeah, through your worship, I'd just like to highlight that Saturday, September 7th is our Household Hazardous Waste Day annual event held at GFL at 444 Advance Avenue. And I'd just like to highlight that we finally have in place ECA approval for the Water Street landfill. That document's about 20 years in the making, has gone through a lot of staff hands, but our compliance coordinator, Sarah McCullum's been instrumental in seeing that approval through.
Great, thanks, Andrew. And you're absolutely right. The hazardous waste event is an extremely well-attended event. I know, having been there a number of years in a row, that if you don't get there early, you're in line for a bit. So thank you for reminding us. Activity report, fire department, August 2024. Is there anything in that report that council would like to ask the chief about, or any concerns? Go ahead, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, worship. Through you, I have a comment and then a question. So on Saturday, I was up at the fire station to watch the men and women of our fire prevention go through the mobile smokehouse fire thing, or whatever you want to call it. Sorry, I don't know the exact name, but I got up there and I was very well received. All my questions were answered, and I even had the opportunity to go through the unit itself before they fired it up, and to see what was going on. Got to learn some things. I got to learn that how you can clear smoke from a house by using a hose, by spraying it out a window. It was very effective. So, but it was really nice to see how professional everything was run, and that training tool itself, I see, was very worthwhile of having it there. So I just want to thank everybody that was there that day, that hosted myself, and it was great experience for myself to see. One of the questions I have on this report is that there's a community emergency preparedness grant, and I'm just wondering what we were asking for and what kind of dollar value that we put in the grant for.
Through your worship to Councillor Pennell. So we haven't submitted the second round application. The first round was focused around updating some communication equipment within 99 Advance. There was also items for an evacuation trailer and increased communication ability as far as like Starlink internet. That being said, we are going to look at that again and see if those priorities still align with where we're going.
Great, thank you. And sorry, with Starlink internet, is that for when you're on scene or is that at the fire halls?
So the original ask was for a stationary unit that could be placed at 99. And then there was a mobile unit that we had discussed having in place so that if we are in either south or north for an emergency, it would allow us to have proper coverage.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Purnell. Is there any other questions or comments with respect to the fire department report? Seeing none. Activity report, executive services, August 2024. I believe that would be yours, Mr. Grant. Is there anything that anyone would like to highlight or speak to with respect to that report, or have any questions for Mr. Grant with respect to it? Mr. Grant, go ahead.
So I've already mentioned this to council, but just for the public record, as council is aware, we have made a small shift to the organizational structure to have human resources report directly into the chief administrator's office, CAO's office, as I think is appropriate. And as was mentioned earlier tonight, discussions with our institutional partners on the broader homelessness issues continue, and I expect them to continue for the foreseeable future.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Grant. Is there anything from Mr. Grant's presentation that anybody has any questions with? Seeing none, now we'll look for a motion that council consent to the approval of the following routine items. That the minutes of the regular session of council dated July 23rd, 2024, and the special session of council dated August 12th, 2024 be adopted as presented. That the Waste Diversion and Municipal Heritage Committee minutes of July 11th through to July 25th, 2024 be received for information. That the correspondence for information items dated August 27, 2024 be received. That council receive for information the Community Corporate Services Best and Bash Naming Rights Agreement report, and further that council authorize the mayor and the clerk to be authorized to execute the agreement with the Best and Bash Developments for the period of September 1st, 2024 through August 31st, 2034. That council receive for information the Financial Services Report Quarter 2 Financial Update. That council receive for information the Council Inquiries Follow-Up SOS In-Kind Donation Report. That the activity reports for the Financial Services, Corporate, Community and Corporate Services, Infrastructure Services, the Fire Department, and Executive Services for the month of August 2024, which are items 8.9 through 8.13, be received for information. Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Martin. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Now on to items for consideration. Correspondence removed for discussion under service cellular communications, and I believe Deputy Mayor Calvary, you're going to speak to that.
Yeah, I'd just like to send a support letter off to the Flemington, Wyoming area. They're having some issues getting their cell towers up that they were promised, and so I've got a little blurb here I'd like to send out that Council of the Town of Greater Napanee supports the resolution of the Town of Flemington, Wyoming. I'm having difficulty with that one. Calling on the federal government and the ISED to make their priority to push forward their commitment to providing critical telecommunication infrastructure in a meaningful and timely manner, and provide action and enforcement on the regulations that the mandate timely installed and approved cell tower installations, and further that council direct a copy of this resolution to be sent to the Town of Flemington, Wyoming, the Honorable Melanie Jolene, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Canada, the Honorable Mary Ng, Minister of Export and Promotion, International Trade and Economic Development of Canada, the Honorable Francois Philippe Champagne, Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry of Canada, Innovation, Science and Economic Development of Canada, the ISED, Shelby Cramp Nyman, MP, Rick Braziz, MPP, and the Associates of Municipal of Ontario, AMO. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Calvin. You're going to make that by way of motion?
Yes, I would.
Do we have a seconder, Councillor Hicks? Is there any questions or comments or concerns with respect to the motion that's on the floor that the Deputy Mayor presented? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Infrastructure Services, Utilities, Water Pollution Control Plant, WPCP, Sludge Heat Exchanger Installation Report. And I see Councillor Hicks has left the council chambers. Who is going to speak to this, or do we need, Mr. Gerard, if you want to come up and speak to it? Thanks, Andrew.
Through your worship, not much to add to the report presented, other than this option allows the most flexibility for staff in the timing of the installation and the overall price to install that piece of equipment.
Great, thanks, Andrew. Does anybody have any questions or comments with respect to the report or the presentation? Seeing none, we do have a recommendation the council receive for information, the Infrastructure Services, Utilities, Water Pollution Control Plant, WPCP, Sludge Heat Exchanger Installation Report, and further that council direct staff to proceed with the install of the sludge heat exchanger at the WPCP. Moved by Councillor Pennell, seconded by Councillor Shank. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. And thank you, Councillor Pennell, for getting Councillor Hicks. Next up is the 2024-2027 non-union compensation bylaw. And I see Holly has come up. When you're ready, Holly, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Through your worship, I'm here today to present the 2024-2027 compensation bylaw. As you can see in the report, the current compensation bylaw that we're working under expired December 31st, 2023. That's why we're redoing this process and getting this bylaw back in front of council today. The compensation bylaw takes effect for all of our non-union employees. So that includes our permanent, our part-time and our permanent part-time casual employees, as well as seasonal and students. What you'll see different in this bylaw, which we have not done in the past, is we've separated the non-compensation elements out of the past bylaw and moved them into people policies, which you can see in the two separate documents attached to this report. So some of the items that were removed from the compensation bylaw that were previously in this document were the dress code, the probationary period, some rules and regulations around personal leaves of absence, as well as our summer days program. The reason these were removed was because for two reasons. One, they're not necessarily directly compensation related. And two, is it allows us to manage these at an operational CAO level. And then it allows the compensation bylaw directly to be related to compensation and have a nice clear focus going forward. So the ask here today is that we accept and get a resolution for the compensation bylaw, as well as accept the presented people policies that are in front of you today. We do believe that this is a really positive bylaw coming forward, and as well with the policies. I'd like to thank the staff that participated in the surveys that allowed us to come up with these, as well as council who has sat with me on a number of occasions to come up with the bylaw that you have presented here today. That's both fair and equitable to our employees. And I look forward to presenting this to our staff if it is passed this evening. Some areas of note that you will see some changes in are our mental health, our annual increases of 3% over the next 4 years, increases to our vision care, some drug coverage, paramedical benefits, as well as our vacation entitlements, leave allowance, clothing allowance, statutory holidays, and bank time allowance for our rec staff. I look forward to any questions and happy to answer if you have any.
Thanks, Holly. Does anybody have any questions with respect to Holly's presentation or the report that's in front of us this evening? Seeing none, I'd just like to thank you, Holly, for all the hard work that you did on this. These negotiations are never easy and never straightforward, and I know that you spent a lot of time and effort to get to the point where we are tonight, so thank you for that. We do have a recommendation that council receive for information the 2024 through 2027 non-union compensation bylaw report, and further that council adopt the updated compensation framework through the bylaw presented at this meeting, and further that council adopt the following human resources personnel policies as presented: dress code, summer days, probationary period, personal leaves or leaves of absence, vacations, paid holidays, non-union, sick days, and EI rebate. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Norrie. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Unsuccessful tax sales and option to vest. And I see Ms. Hamill coming up. And I think at this point, Madam Clerk, before Ellen gets settled, maybe we should do a motion to go past 10 o'clock, seeing as I think it's pretty safe to assume we're going to get there. So we'll look for a motion to go past 10 o'clock this evening, meeting to go past 10 o'clock. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Martin. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. The floor is yours, Ellen, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council, before you have a staff report on an update regarding some properties that Council had chose to vest in 2023. The actual act of vesting those properties has not yet been completed, and I wanted to bring before you some additional information to reconfirm Council's intent in vesting those properties. So at the time that the staff report was provided to council, it was noted that the financial implications of doing so would simply be the legal cost to vest those. Unfortunately, that's not the case. We do actually have to write off the full amount of the arrears that are on those properties, including any outstanding taxes, penalties, fees, or any charges that have been applied to the roll. So given that updated information and the additional costs that's associated with vesting each of these properties, we're just looking for council to either reconfirm their decision to vest all of these properties or to remove potentially one property located on Highway 33 that they may or may not wish to vest given the financial cost to do so.
Thanks, Ellen. Is there any questions or comments with respect? Go ahead, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship, through you. Ellen, thank you very much for the report. On the first page, right at the very last paragraph, it says 9 properties were located on Hillside. In the middle of it says one property is vacant landlocked. One property is a vacant landlocked parcel that staff recommend be vested. Which parcel is that?
Through your worship, I was just looking at the map imaging here and I'm seeing that the street's not showing there. I believe that that is off of Switzerville Road. So on page 5 of 6 of the report, there's an aerial image. It's highlighted in a purple imagery. It's a treed vacant lot.
And it's staff recommendation that we do vest this?
That's correct. And then council can have the choice to declare surplus and try to sell on the open market if that's what they choose to do as a next step.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pennell. Is there any other questions or comments for Ellen with respect to her presentation or her report? Seeing none, we do have a couple of options with respect to resolutions. I guess one is to reaffirm the resolution 464/23, invest all the properties listed, or B, consider the resolution 46423 and remove the property described as PIN number 45102/0280, roll number 1121-140-01-05900 from the listing of properties to be vested by the municipality. What is council's wishes with respect to this? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Calvert.
Yeah, I'd like to take off that, that roll number there, 1121400-100-5900. Take that off and do nothing with that at this time.
Great. Deputy Mayor Calvert, did you wish to make that by resolution
Yeah,
or by motion? Sorry.
Yeah, I'd like to make that by way of motion.
Recommendation that council receive for information the financial services unsuccessful tax sales and the option to vest report, and further that council reconsider resolution 464 and to remove the property described as PIN 451020280, roll number 1121-140-010-05900 from the listing of properties to be vested by the municipality. Seconded by Councillor Hicks. Is there any further comments, questions, or concerns with respect to the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thanks, Alan. Next up is the 2025 preliminary capital ask listing. And do we have someone speaking to that? You are as well. Floor is yours, Alan.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report is coming before you as a result of a staff report that came forward at the last council meeting, where there was a pre-budget approval request for a purchase of a tandem plow truck in advance of the 2025 capital budget. In doing so, council requested a preliminary or a listing of what other capital asks we may be seeing as part of the 2025 capital budget. So staff has compiled that listing for you, which has formed the basis of this report to help provide context to the request that was previously requested from staff.
Great, thanks, Alan. Is there any questions or comments? And I know staff is going to be looking for some direction with respect to this as well. And this is with respect to the, I think, the dump truck that we heard about in a couple of meetings prior to, I guess. So, Deputy Mayor Cower.
Yeah, I think we should go with alternate option number 2 at this moment. I don't like the idea of spending money that we don't know we have yet.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Calver. Is there any other comments or questions with respect to the report that's in front of us and the one that we've heard in the past? Seeing none, would you like to make that by way of motion, Deputy Mayor Calver?
Yes, I would.
Motion, we have a recommendation that council receive for information the Financial Services 2025 Preliminary Capital Ask Listing Report, and further that council does not approve the purchase of a second tandem plow truck at this time and direct staff to bring forward the request as part of the 2025 budget process. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Shank. Is there any further comments or questions or concerns with respect to the motion that's on the floor? Go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
Through you, Your Worship, can we request that staff start looking into mitigating any potential issues if the existing truck goes down in the 2024-2025 winter season?
I think Mr. Grant would like to speak to that.
I'll start off and I can pass things over to Mr. Cuthell. I would suggest that that work has already been underway. I did have a discussion with Mr. Cuthell as early as this afternoon. Should this vehicle not make it through the winter, there would be service level impacts. And with that, I can turn things over to Director Cuthell to provide more context.
Yeah, the floor is yours, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. And to Your Worship, Yes, the reason we brought forth the preliminary approval for purchase was majority just for the health of the truck in question that to be replaced, as well as a few other trucks that are in excess of the identified replacement age and the precondition health of those trucks. Without to get through this winter, it's going to depend on precipitation levels. Last winter, we were lucky. We got through the winter without a lot of operations needing to take place. If it takes place and we do lose a truck of our fleet, we do not have a spare tandem truck to backfill that right now. We may look at having to adjust the shifts of our staff, and it may mean that we prioritize our arterial routes, and then some of our secondary routes in some of our areas of our community may have to wait to a secondary shift, because as I presented at the last council, there was there's two levels that we have to meet our response times for interventions. With accumulation of snow, ice formations, we do have to respond at a tighter time frame. But then the classifications of the roads, sorry, go back to it's also the hours of service. We only have one operator per plow route on staff right now. So we may have to keep staff at home rested and run 2 shifts. So I guess just to let council know, the answer to the question is service levels will definitely be affected if we do lose some of these trucks off the road and we are unable to find a replacement truck to put in our fleet through rental services or mutual aid agreements.
Great, thanks, Mr. Cuthell. I think we've got Councillor Hicks and we have Deputy Mayor Cower.
So I have through your worship, I have a follow-up. So thank you, Jeff, for reiterating all of your reasons for requesting the truck. Having said all that, even if you did the preliminary purchase, if you put in the purchase order this year, you're still not going to see that truck until mid-2025. Is that correct? So we could still be down a truck, but still not be able to do anything about it. If we delay in ordering this truck until 2025, we're not going to see it until mid-2026. Is that right?
That's correct. If the order, through your worship, if the order window closes for the 2025 models, we would be, the order window just opened up late last week for the new builds, and it could close as early as January and extend to as late as March of 2025.
So if I may, through you, your worship, so then what we're talking about is delaying this decision for September, October, November, December, January, February, for 6 months, only to come to the realization that we need to order a truck. Is that what I understand?
You're correct. Yes, through the last report, we have identified there are currently, I believe, 5 trucks that are outside of the age identified for replacement. Accompanying age is not the factor for replacing a truck. It's the health of some of these trucks. Through the identified plan, we have a single axle that we're putting off because it doesn't serve as great a need. In our fleet operations is what we can get by with a tandem truck. But the one single axle that's a couple years out, at this point in time, it'd be 26 years old when it's up for replacement. And
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Deputy Mayor Cower.
Through your worship. So when we approved the one truck back when it was approved, why was it not ordered then?
through your worship, as mentioned, we went through the tendering processes. Staff had found an option for procurement that was going to be very financially beneficial for the municipality. It did take some time to get that set up, And then we went through the tendering process, speccing out through multiple dealer suppliers and spec'd out the truck. And then the order window did not open up for new model builds until it was just last week.
So if we had have ordered it prior to last week, we would have got a 2024 model versus a 2025?
These trucks, through your worship, these trucks are spec build trucks. We were unable to locate any trucks that were built to our spec. They're a hot commodity. And the manufacturing is just getting back in line now. We're still seeing 18-month build times. During COVID, this was greater. We were in excess of 24 months, 2 years to see these builds. And any trucks that are spec'd in, there's a lot of them that would be sitting on the lots that would be for your King Series highways and such like that. So they didn't meet any of our specifications that we could find.
So with the order of this one truck that was approved, when do you expect to possibly see it?
The truck that was ordered now, with it to land in our yard and expected to be in full operation, would be of September of 2025.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Calver. Is there any other questions or comments before we entertain a vote on the motion? Councillor Hicks?
Through you, your worship, I'd ask for a recorded vote on this.
Yes, we can do that. Madam Clerk, we've got a request for a recorded vote. Sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Shank.
The point is everybody's got a wish list, but the ramifications are, this is what happened. This is the reason why the municipality doesn't have a lot of liquidity. You got over $5 million and $48,000 worth of capital that people want. So what's more important, a fire truck or a snowplow? All right? Or $5 million on Meach Road? All right? Money was spent. Doesn't matter what we can do, but we can only move forward. But the point is as soon as you start going on to next year's budget, all right, you don't know what this winter brings. This ordering this now and spending next year's, all right, we're not getting the new one that we was budgeted for in February, I believe, or March, not getting it till September of 2025. All right. Yes, it would be nice to order another one so we have another one to replace it, but we don't know what type of winter. If we have a real bad winter, can we go ahead and let a fire truck make that last longer? All right. Or we might end up having to get another another snowplow. But the point is when you're not extremely fluid, then we're going to have to watch our pennies and dimes. All right. So all I'm stating is guys, we got over $5 million worth of asks. There's no way fiscally that we can go ahead and say, here, spend $5 million. As you well know what the taxpayers are paying, you're talking about homelessness tonight. You're talking about a lot of other things. There's a lot of other things that are in play. So wait until the staff have compiled their budget process, what their needs, their wants, their wishes, and then what we can do and what we can't do, and what can we actually fiscally responsibly do for a budget increase or a tax increase. And there is death in taxes, and you know taxes only go one way, but it has to be livable, all right? I would love nothing better to go ahead and say, Jeff, yet not a problem at all, we're gonna get you another one. But how did you get in the place where we are right now? And if you wanna go down that road, go down that road, but there's no way you're gonna I'm gonna be agreeing to go down a road with spending money on next year's budget when we haven't even got there yet. End of discussion for me.
Thank you, Councillor Shank. Is there any other comments or questions or concerns? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, I will turn the vote over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that council receive the report for information and further that council does not approve the purchase of a second tandem plow truck at this time and direct staff to bring forward the request as part of the 2025 budget process. Ward 1, Councillor Shank. Ward 2, Councillor Hicks.
No.
Ward 3, Councillor Pennell.
Yes.
Ward 4, Councillor Norrie.
Yes.
Ward 5, Counselor Martin,
No.
Deputy Mayor Calver, Mayor Richardson.
Yes.
That motion is carried.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next up on the agenda, the Executive Services Committee's roles and update to SR/581/2024. I see Mr. Grant's going back up to the front of the tables. The floor is yours, sir, when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship to members of council, at a previous meeting, council directed the CAO to do a review of an issue that happened in this building in terms of some painting that was done in the building and also permitting an art show to happen prior to council receiving recommendations from the Market Square Advisory Committee and deciding on the use of the building. So that review has been conducted. And so what I can tell you is there's a couple of takeaways that I would bring to council's attention on that. And first, I would suggest that I would, in all these reviews and the things that had occurred, I would assume positive intent from all parties that were involved. What I would say is some of the actions that led to some of the remodeling, if you will, or the painting of Town Hall and then planning for an event before council had given direction on the future of the facility and particularly with the inside of the facility was the decisions that were made at the staff level to permit an event to go forward before receiving direction should not have occurred until such time that the advisory committee, who's done some great work, has brought forward their report and council give direction on the future of the facility. On a larger scale, I would say that the review also highlighted some, I think, general misunderstandings, particularly at the staff level in terms of the role and responsibilities of advisory committees, staff's role and responsibilities in serving those committees, as well as among some committee members about role clarity, about the mandate, level of staff support, and processes required. So within this report, what I'm recommending is that council directs staff to bring forward policies and guidelines just to clarify the roles for staff, as well as advisory committee members about roles and responsibilities, use of corporate resources, whether it be money or staff time, and as well to further ask the Market Square Committee to bring forward a report on recommendations on the future of the facility. With the retirement of General Manager Zetterberg, I will be taking over in the interim support for that committee. And the benefit of bringing forward said report is we can line up some of those recommendations so staff can bring forward some ideas for the 2024 or 2025 budget process based on those recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Thank you for the work that you've done on this. Is there any questions or comments from Mr. Grant with respect to his report or his presentation? Seeing none, we do have a recommendation that council receive for information the Executive Services Committee roles and update to SR 581/2024 report, and further that council direct staff to draft comprehensive guidelines to clarify and define the roles between the committees, staff, and council to be reported back at a future meeting for formal endorsement by council, and further that council request a report from the Market Square Committee which identifies options and considerations for the community uses of the main floor of Town Hall which council can use to inform budget conversations. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Shank. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, Councillor Hicks.
Through you, Your Worship. So in applying for grants for any funding for the remediation and updating of the main, just the main floor, accessible bathroom, etc., is it to the benefit of the grant process to show that we're actually wanting to use the main floor. So when I say that, and I'm just going to use just one example. So last year during Culture Days, I was here all day, mainly outside to one side, but I was here in and out of the building where they had a art show. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was all students or youth art show. And it was well attended and people got to vote, and then a prize was given for, you know, the most popular painting. The bathrooms weren't utilized. To the best of my knowledge, it was only the main floor area where, and there were staff, there was a staff person and a volunteer on site. Is that a possibility again this year? Has it been ruled out? Like, I'm just, because I think if we're applying for grants, if we leave it sitting unused, then it's perceived that you don't really need it. Whereas if we're trying to find uses for the way it is right now, but wanting to improve on the space, just so you understand where I'm going with this. Thank you.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, I would say that there are some plans to use the space for things such as Culture Days and town-run facilities. I'd say if you were applying for grants, some of the grants would look for what is the resolution from council for the purpose of the building. I think that you would also want to do some interior work to decide what is the design of the building going to be and figure out what it's going to accommodate. If there had to be renovations in the facility, what would be some of the work you'd want to do to figure out how best to do that? And if you're going to remove things, what's behind the walls, that sort of stuff. And none of that work has been done. What I would recommend is with the good work of the Market Square Advisory Committee, being able to get that resolution of council, turn it into an operational plan, so we can break the work into phases. I would suggest it'd likely start with the outside of the building, and then how do we best meet the recommendations and what council decides to make with those in terms of a resolution. So we can begin that work quickly. So to answer your question, yes, you'd want to show that you want to use the building. And doesn't necessarily come by using the building itself. It would necessarily come with, what is the direction we've received to use the building? And then what is any of the design work that you may want to do that would facilitate that use?
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Is there any other questions or comments for Mr. Grant? Correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Clerk, we do have a motion on the floor, or do we not? I think we've got a mover and seconder. Is there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion that's on the floor, opposed, motion's carried. Next up is celebration of career achievements of Greater Napanee Olympian Brittany Benn. And I see Mr. Brown's coming up who will speak to this, and I thank Mr. Brown for doing that.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'll just start by saying currently there are 8 wall-mounted showcases in the south hallway of the SBC lobby. They are occupied by 6 of our local organizations. They are Napanee District Minor Hockey, Napanee District Skating Club, the Napanee Crunch, Softball Napanee Express, Greater Napanee Soccer Club, and the Napanee Raiders. The other 2 showcases that are occupied are those of Avril Lavigne and Leroy Blue. Those are dedicated spaces to celebrate the career achievements of those individuals. We would like to add a name to that showcase wall, and that is Brittany Benn. I wasn't going to read the whole thing in the report, but I think she deserves it. Brittany Benn grew up in Greater Napanee playing a variety of sports. Her passion for rugby began at Napanee District Secondary School, where she graduated in 2007. From there, Benn spent 5 years at the University of Guelph, where she obtained 5 OUA gold medals, 3 CIS bronze, 2 CIS silvers, and 1 national championship title. Benn has received countless personal awards. She was first team All-Canadian in 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, and 2012. In 2012 alone, She was named OUA All-Star, OUA MVP, CIS Player of the Year, CIS All-Canadian, BLG nominee for CIS Athlete of the Year, and received the Pioneer OUA Female Athlete of the Year award. She received her first national senior women's cap in France in November of 2013 and was part of the 2014 Can-Am series where Canada's women defeated the United States at Shawnigan Lake School and at West Hill Stadium in Langford, BC. Ben helped Canada to their best ever second place finish at the 2014 Women's Rugby World Cup in Paris, France in August of 2014. Ben made her debut with Canada's women's sevens team on the World Rugby Women's Sevens World Series in Atlanta in March of 2015. In May 15, the Canadian team won the Amsterdam Sevens in the dying seconds of the final, qualifying Canada for Rio Olympics in 2016. That summer, Ben was a member of Canada's gold medal winning team at the 2015 Pan Am Games in Toronto, where she recorded 3 tries in the tournament. Ben had a breakout season in 15-16 and was named to the tournament dream team at the Clermont-Ferrand Sevens in May, the final stop of the season. Ben finished the 2015-2016 WSWS ranked 4th on the team with 9 tries and then helped Canada win their first ever Olympic bronze medal in women's rugby. In 2018, Ben was a part of Canada's 4th place finish at the Commonwealth Games and was also competed at the World Cup Sevens in San Francisco. She contributed to Canada's 3rd place overall finish at the 2018-19 World Rugby 7 Series to secure the team's spot at the Tokyo Olympics in 2020. In her second Olympic appearance, Ben scored 1 try in 5 games for Canada. Through the end of the 1920 World Rugby 7 Series, Ben has played in 150 career matches of the circuit, scoring 67 tries and 335 points. She won the Impact Player of the Year during the May 19 7 Series stop in Langford, BC. Currently, Ben is working with the Queen's Women's Rugby program as an assistant coach. So in order to make room for the this is just operationally. In order to make room for the showcase, staff are proposing to move the Napanee Raiders showcase from the South Hallway up to the large lounge, which already has their Wall of Excellence display. It's also a gathering place for watching the Raiders games. So to staff, that makes sense to have the Raiders showcase move up beside the TV and the fireplace in the large lounge, and that would free up a space down in the recognition hallway for Brittany's showcase. Happy to take questions, and sorry I was a little long-winded, but I felt she deserved it.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, and I think you're absolutely right. If there was a Hockey Hall of Fame for rugby players, I think it's pretty safe to say Britt could probably get there. Even though we've all followed her through her rugby career, it's really pretty amazing when you read all of her accomplishments that at such a young age she's been able to do. So, and the most wonderful thing is she's just a Napanee kid, right, who has now come back home to roost. So I think this is a well worth venture. Just so everybody knows, this was brought up through, it came in through the office of the mayor. It had been brought up in the last term of council, and we just never got to it. We had a few other things going on. So I think this is a well worth venture. I think she deserves it, and I would support it, but I'd like to hear from the rest of council as well. Councillor Shank.
I'll move staff recommendation. Totally concur.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor from Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Hicks. Is there any other comments or questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Calver.
Sorry, just a question for Chris there. Is the wall something, these showcases, are we looking at creating more of them, or is there just no more space and that's why we're moving things around, or and are we working on a procedure of how this happens?
Yeah, thank you. So through your worship to Deputy Mayor Calver, as part of the staff recommendation, staff have identified that there is no real formal process for taking these types of requests. So staff want to come back. We definitely need to have a process. We want to come back with some guidelines on how members from the public can put these requests in. that would allow us to evaluate, make decisions. There are only 8 in that hallway, and so eventually they will be full. And we also have to have a plan for pushing out our community groups too, because there should be somewhere in our recreation facilities where we acknowledge them as well. And that's a place where they can hang banners and keep their trophies and hang their jerseys. And we do need to think about the end goal as well, so that we don't run out of space. So staff are going to come back at some point and give some guidelines as to how we think that should look. And I would also point out at this point that the community showcase wall in the south hallway is something completely different from the wall of fame in the north hallway. That is run differently and separately from this situation.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Carver.
All right, yeah, because no question, she definitely deserves a spot there.
Yep, thank you. And you know, we'd be remiss if we didn't thank the Raiders for working with us on this, right? So, you know, they've moved their stuff upstairs, which I think is a great idea. They've already got stuff up there now, and we do appreciate for everything that they've done to work with us on this. So, is there any other questions or comments before we call the vote? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion that's on the floor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Bylaws. Bylaw number 2024-0047 to authorize the implementation of a conditions of employment, compensation, and benefits policy for the non-union employees. We'll look for a motion to put it on the floor. Moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Councillor Shank. Ready first, second, and finally passed. This 7th day of August, 2024. Thank you, Madam Clerk. I sometimes struggle with that. All in favor of the motion that's on the floor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Bylaw number 2024-0048 to appoint an acting fire chief, and that would be Chief Armstrong. He's going to stick around with us for a little bit longer, and we're happy to have him. So thank you, Chief, and we'll look for a motion to extend Sean's contract through to April 2025. Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. Ready first, second, and finally passed this 27th day of August, 2024. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Information reports from members. Do we have any information report from members? I don't believe so.
So through your worship, this is the opportunity if anyone wanted to verbally speak to anything that's going on with any of their committee appointments or anything else.
Does anybody have any comments or we can always come back to it. Thanks. Moving on, inquiries. Do we have any inquiries? Any members of council have any inquiries with respect to anything that needs to be addressed? Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, and staff is aware of this because I did give them a heads up earlier today, but I'm going to ask that we do a fulsome review on the resolution tracker. 17 pages. So I think it's time to do a review, and there's probably some things that can be closed. And the CAO, Mr. Grant, has agreed to raise this with the senior leadership team. So yeah, I just thought it might be a good opportunity. I was thinking maybe in October something comes back, if that fits in with the schedule. Thanks.
Mr. Grant.
Through the mayor to the councillor, what I can do is review with the senior leadership team, do an assessment to see, what recommendations can come off the list because they've been completed, which are in process and which we might recommend come off the list because they may no longer be council's priority. I'll do that review and get a sense of how long that would take. I think it might be October, but let me get back to you on that so I don't overpromise.
Yep, go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
One further thing. I'm an Excel girl. Now, I know that these cannot be put. Is it possible for at least this particular recurring document to have it in both, I guess, a PDF version and Excel? I know that the Accessibility Ontario is required for that, but thank you.
I think Madam Clerk can respond to that. Go ahead. Madam
So
Clerk.
Through your worship, unfortunately, our agenda platform does not play nicely with Excel, but I believe that I can commit to staff providing counselors with an Excel version of the file. Because yes, it is much easier if you can do the sorting functions, which is the whole reason it's in that format.
Thank you, because I'd like to see how many resolutions are with infrastructure versus utilities versus fire. It would make it, I think, much easier for council. So I thank you greatly for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Are there any other inquiries? Seeing none, notices the motion. I believe Councillor Norrie has noticed the motion. Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a notice of motion to come back as a motion September the 10th meeting. And Jessica, I have a copy for you. I move that the town give the remainder of the money owing to the LASOS minus the in-kind and the $15,000 already received of an amount of $17,320 to meet the town's yearly obligation of 20% to the LASOS.
Thank you, Councillor Norrie, and we'll deal with that on their next regular session of council. Is there any other notice to motions? Seeing none, new business. Madam Clerk, I don't believe we have any new business this evening. Announcements. Does anyone have any announcements that they'd like to, Deputy Mayor Cower?
I got a couple little ones here. First of all, like our Napanee Express U11 girls, they won bronze in Windsor this past weekend. They played their little hearts out there and did a good job for us. And all the Napanee Express teams are doing extremely well as well. Another thing I'd like to talk about too, or at least mention, there's been a lot of chatter about a safe injection site going to be put here in Napanee. And I'd just like to clarify that there is no safe injection site on this council's agenda, and I don't think on anybody else. Can anybody verify that with me?
Nothing I've heard, but I'm sure staff will check and see if there's anything in the works, but I don't believe, and nothing that's come to our attention anyways, at least mine.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Deputy Mayor. That's never been raised to me, and I've never come across my desk, but I can certainly make inquiries to double confirm that for members of council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Calver. Are there any other announcements? Councillor Norrie.
Yeah, just a quick shout out. Last Sunday, we had our final Music by the River. At least 50 people showed up. Ethan Stein started, a graduate of Harmony Lounge, and then Trilogy brought out a young lad, another Ethan, who'd never been on stage before, plays at Harmony, and played a couple songs that did fantastic. So everybody enjoyed it. The weather was great, and it ended the season very positively. Thank you.
Great. Nice to hear that. And I know that Music by the River has become quite a success. So thanks for bringing that to our attention. Is there any other announcements? Seeing none, CEO's remarks. Mr. Grant, do you have any remarks you'd like to share with us this evening?
Nothing to add at this time, Your Worship.
Thank you. The forward calendar, and I know we've all had an opportunity to see it, and I know that Councillor Hicks has spoken to the council resolution tracker. Is there anything in the forward calendar or anything else that anyone would like to add with respect to the council resolution tracker? Seeing none, look for a motion to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Greater Napanee. Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Martin. Ready, first, second, and finally passed this 27th day of August, 2024. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Look for a motion for adjournment. Moved by Councillor Shank, second by Councillor Hicks. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thanks, folks. It's been a long evening, and but we've covered a lot of ground, and we'll see you next week.